Hi there, everyone. Welcome to CS Out Here number 10. We have an amazing group of guests, all from NA, and one guy from the UK, and Frog.
Hi.
First off, I want to start off by thanking Refrag for partnering with NartOutHere. Refrag is a CSGO training tool to help improve your game. Train like a pro, play like a pro. Make sure to use the code NART to save 15% off. Now, I'm gonna announce all the guests we got here today. We got the Godfather of Smokes himself back from rotation and Nart.
Hey, what's up, man? What about the Godfather of Tactics too? No?
Do you want me to, do you want to get upgraded? I'll upgrade you.
Okay, thanks.
There we go. The Godfather of Tactics. We got Shake Zula.
What's up? How you doing, guys?
We got CXZI. I'm just gonna call him Danny.
What's up, guys?
That Paladin, a usual guest.
Yo.
Anthran, the king of bad takes.
Yeah, what the fuck?
M&M's. And of course,
only good takes.
Yeah.
Only good takes. And also to Professor, here's the video photo.
Well,
So
the thing is, he's seen an episode of the illustrious
I know
30
exactly.
podcast, so he's only
lies.
lies.
Exactly. And we got Frog from the UK.
Hi there. I'm actually from Canada, but I live in the UK.
He lives in the UK. He's a DGen. Staying up at this hour. All right, guys. How's everyone doing? All good at the late hour?
Dude,
8 p.m.
I messed up my right ear. You're not supposed to use Q-tips, for after like you shower, but I just like the feeling, and now I just have like a vibrating sensation in my right ear.
I know how it feels to have messed
Does
up
anybody else
your-
use Q-tips after they shower?
No.
Okay.
After you shower?
Yeah.
Why, bro? You
I don't know,
you
it
just
just-
clean
it just-
yourself.
It just feels
You
good,
got a
man.
nice soggy Q-tip coming out. Come
So
on
you said
now.
you said it was your right ear, Nart?
Yeah, it's better now though, but I was getting like random like vibrations in my right ear.
I blew an air horn in my left ear at a football game once, and I couldn't hear out of my right ear or my left ear for 3 days.
Well, then you shouldn't do that.
Well, it's called live and learn. Hello? Gotta make mistakes to learn from them. Isn't that right, Shake?
Yeah. Always improving, baby. Review and fix. That's the motto of all my teams. That worked really well with us. Yeah, it typically works. Review and fix. We typically review and then not fix, and then we do the same mistake, and then we just do that for like 3 months. And then
Live, laugh, learn.
No, we'll
Yep,
fix it.
doing
We'll fix
fine.
it, but then something else will happen.
There
That's
was a
not the
lot
other-
happening.
All right, to start off the show, we're at an amazing freaking start off right now. To start it off, we're gonna hit on EG, and there are a lot of moves they made this last 2 weeks. They added Nealon, Hex. They upgraded Hex, added Volborg as a coach, and also Hepa on one of their teams. And they downgraded Stewie to a streamer and Rush. What is everyone's thoughts on this?
I still think they didn't fix the problem.
Yeah.
Well, I think that at least the kind of big like personalities on the team have kind of like taken a side in what the situation is instead of kind of all mixing together, and hopefully like bringing in these people will help, like, I don't know, make the vision of the team at least a little bit better, because I feel like people were kind of just down and out in general, like when they were kind of going into all these events and just bombing out. And maybe like getting an upgrade like Hexty, like I'm glad that he's got the upgrade, because I mean he's been grinding for a long time with Carpe Diem, and having the opportunity to now actually reap the rewards of the Blue Point program, that I feel really strongly about. I'm happy that Hexty got the opportunity to get.
I think everyone's happy about that.
I think like the big thing to talk about too with Hex is that he's the first, like, he's got a lot of weight on his shoulders, because he's the first talent that an NA top team has taken a chance on that's not just like OC or Grim dropping like a 1.4 on people, right? Like Hex has a lot of potential, but he didn't like dominate the tier 2 scene in a way that like other players had to get picked up. So this is like, if he can prove that he can hang with like the tier 1 players, then it makes a case for other tier 1 like orgs like Liquid and EG to potentially look at dipping back into the NA talent pool, because right now I think that they're too scared to take a risk on an NA player when they could just go pick up some EU player who they know is going to be working out.
Yeah, definitely is the big thing. I mean, like, obviously, like, I mean, I just don't want like I think Hex like being on that team is like could be a good thing, but it's like how they like mold them honestly. Because I mean, I can't speak like I don't know what happened behind closed doors, but obviously like with that team, like they didn't do that well in Europe, but obviously they had a lot of internal issues. It seemed like from what it was happening that we know of. But I mean, if like they actually grind and like want to be like that top team again, I mean, it could be a really good opportunity for them. But you don't want it to go to waste like how some like the older talents like before Valorant, like people just get didn't really have the chance to like go anywhere. They get on a team and then just kind of goes to shit.
I've only heard good things about Hex like through his former coach KJ when he coached RBG, and then his former teammate Maxwell as well. But I'm not too familiar with Hex. Do you think he was a better option than Masuta?
Yes, I think so. I think that. I mean, it allows them to like stay in the NARMR, which is like huge. I know they didn't want to like do the loophole, but like I think playing the NARMR of the EURMR was a really good decision on their part. And then like I just think Hex has a lot of upside. Like I've played with him, I've known him. He's like, I mean, like you said, he's a good person. He's got a good head on his shoulders, and I think that he's got potential to take his game to the next level. I think that he's a lot of impact in the tier 2 scene. I know that he works hard. Like I'm definitely rooting for him. I just hope that it's not one of those things where he hits like a speed bump, a month from now, and they're looking to move on from him or something. I hope that they genuinely give him time to improve. They genuinely give him, a fair opportunity and a good shot. And I think that they will. I think that something that we're not really touching on too much is like the Valens is a lot more involved in things now, and I don't think he was previously. And I think that that's actually a really big change in terms of EG and how they're going to like operate, especially all three of these teams.
Well, so speaking of that, I've had a chance to talk to the couple of the EG guys, and they've definitely said publicly and in private that Valens is far more involved and that his presence has been much appreciated. Because I think the biggest thing that EG lacked with the Stewie lineup is they didn't have someone to like counterbalance the power of Stewie in that lineup. I don't think they had really someone who was willing to fight with him and sort of like form a coherent vision of the team. And I know he's also been helping them a lot with like their mental game, because there are people within like the Blueprint project, for example, who have suffered in the past from their mental game being kind of weak, or other issues outside the game that have stopped them from realizing their full vision. And so I think Valens is good in those two senses. I think we only have good things to say about Hacks. I think it's definitely time for him to have gotten the call up, and I am happy they didn't go with Mizuta, because it kind of calls into question like what kind of vision EG management has for this team. Because if you have 3 European players, you're most likely not going to go back to being a full NA core, and that's kind of what I was worrying about, was they were going to just commit to being a European team moving forward, and that there's not really space for an NA Blueprint project alongside a European team, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make sense, right? Like, you have 10 players signed onto your org beyond your main roster, and you don't want to actually dip into that pool. And honestly, Masuta was like a known quantity, right? Like, we already knew what we were going to get if we got him. There isn't, I feel like going and dipping into the Blue Point project is just a smarter move in general, and it feels like they're actually utilizing what who they've signed on. But I think the person that I'm kind of interested with this whole thing is Neelan, because he's not necessarily the flashiest player, not a IGL that's jumping off of everyone's page over at K23. And I'm curious to see like what all of you guys think, because I don't really think that he's proven himself that much to kind of lead a team to like greater European success, because after all, that's what the organization, the main roster is for, to have success in Europe.
I mean, honestly, I think it could work well. I still think the biggest pickup for EG with this new lineup is Vorborg, because you could call it bias if you want, but it's just more in the fact that Vorborg has made an impact in all of the teams he's been on. Before he joined Copenhagen Flames, they were barely a notable roster. They weren't doing anything in tier 2. They weren't all that great. They had good pieces, but I don't feel like they were ever used well. Then he got picked up, and you could see almost a direct increase in the team's performance. And I mean, that could be because of a number of things, but it could also be because of Vorborg's presence. But at the same time, I think he also kind of played along well with an IGL like Huxi. And I think he was also that same kind of IGL that Neelan was, where they didn't look amazing. Neelan didn't look amazing past a couple of, breakout times where we saw K23 whoop ass every now and then in the CIS scene, but they never were that consistent name. And I wonder if him with Vorborg, with all this potential talent to work with could actually do something. That's what I think is the big key point to this new roster.
Well, you have to understand that like Vorberg built Copenhagen Flames. I do think that's why they signed him, because he was there from day one. He founded Copenhagen Flames. So I don't think that he's necessarily responsible for Copenhagen Flames clicking later in the year. I think he's just sort of I think his biggest strength lies in his managerial skills, as he previously was the manager of big League of Legends teams in Splice and Gamers 2. And the fact that he obviously has a lot of bona fides when it comes to team building, and I think that's desperately what EG needs right now, is someone who's willing to like build a team along like a coherent vision. Because we saw they have tons of managers now. They have Danny Engels, they have Mad Cow now who's helping out the team. They have Sunshine, they have Vorborg, they have Malik. They have, the Nicola Point seems relatively involved. I think they need someone like Vorborg to define what this team's going to look like. And even if he doesn't have the coaching, chops as someone who comes from the managerial side of things, I think it's important for him because he knows what makes good players and what needs to be changed if things don't immediately start clicking.
I have to say, I agree. Vorborg is, in terms of managerial skills, probably the best person out there right now. Just because what he's accomplished with Copenhagen Flames over the last few years, since the rebrand from the weird old logo that looked like a flame or a phase knockoff. It's been really impressive, constantly scouting out new players within the Danish scene, bringing in veterans that stocks were low, and kind of getting them back up to standard. And I don't think anyone else can really do that. Copenhagen Flames grew from being completely irrelevant, right, a tier 4 team within the Danish scene, to being at the major. That's not nothing, and I think a lot of that can be attributed to Vorborg. I don't know how that the vision that he has will necessarily adapt to NA, because it's a very different market, it's a very different pool of players. But hopefully, I mean, if anyone can fix a sinking ship that was EG, I think Vorborg is probably the best candidate, and having Valence much more involved, I think, is as well a big plus.
I think a big.
All right, go ahead, Shake.
I just think a big question for me is like, are they gonna have enough of everything to like balance? Like Voberg or whatever was more of like a manager type stuff, and he also coached, so like he's probably gonna, like, as you guys talked about, bring more of like nurturing players, fostering team environment, stuff like that. I don't know what kind of style Neelan brings. I don't know if he's like more tactical or if he's like a little bit more loose. So it's like, are they going to be able to like tactically be a good team? Because I think they have everything solved on like the managerial side. They have, Mad Cow, they have Valens, they have all these people that are definitely like level-headed people that players can talk to, that can foster team environments, put out the fires, balance, the egos, all that stuff. It's like, will they be able to actually perform in the server, and do they have enough in that department is kind of the big question for me, especially when it comes to, teaching Hext.
Does anyone know anything at all about Neelan? Like, I feel like it's kind of silly that we're all
we're just like
the assembly of NA elders. But
I mean, at least they're bringing in an IGL, right? At least they're bringing in an IGL, like a known or not a known IGL, but
instead of a
an improvement
IGL,
from Stewie, right? So
right.
I followed him since before K23, or when they were Simon. He's always like just been middle of the pack, and from what I was told, he was scouted out, I believe, by HEPA. He was, suggested by HEPA. They brought him in, did some trials, and they were really impressed with what he did. In terms of stylistically, it's been much more loose. K23's had a lot of good Russian or just CIS players in general that, they've relied just on the mechanics more than a very complicated system. But maybe something like that can kind of be integrated into this team. If I'm honest, I feel like this is sort of a transitionary roster, right? They're going to test the pieces, see how it goes, and I don't think it's going to be the same lineup in a year's time. But hopefully there's still a core, there's still something coherent, and there's actual progress being made in that time period.
For grading like this EG lineup, how would you grade it? These roster moves.
What are we doing? Like a letter rating? Like
Let's do 1 to 10. Let's do 1 to 10. 10 being amazing, 1 being shit.
I'll go 6.5. Being generous.
I'll go like 7.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that like it's got a lot of potential, but there's also like a lot of unknown. And again, with like a new project like this, like you just never know how the rebuild's gonna go. So it's like, yeah, there's just a lot of unknown for me, but there's a lot of upside. So
Definitely.
I think maybe like a 5,
Yeah,
4, and 3
I'm around.
fourths or something.
I'm
Well,
around 5 to
I'm around the
6.
5
The
too.
real question is, are they gonna make it out of the major or for the RMR? Are they gonna make it to the RMR?
Oh yeah.
North
think they
North
can.
America.
I think
They
can.
should.
In a-
It'd
in
be-
a-
I
it'd
have no
be
idea.
amazing if they
I
did.
don't know.
Current team,
I don't know, man.
current team,
I
they
don't
should
know.
make the RMR.
Yeah.
Making the
They
major,
should,
that's
but-
a little bit more of a question.
Yeah.
But a team like
Oh.
EG, that's their goal. Like they should be, they're aiming for that 100%.
They should make the RMR, but if they're not playing the first one and they only have 2 left, who knows?
That's true.
Well,
Team one, you have.
they bought up all the teams that could potentially beat them, so they're making it a little easier. on
Wait,
themselves.
wait. Oh, Alan, I took him down last RMR or last qualifier.
I believe
did.
this time, Danny.
With
I believe
Strife.
in you.
Strife
I
had to take him
mean,
down.
I feel like the problems of EG are just still going to be there. Like, who is going to be the star? Who is going to perform well? Because they picked up Nealon, who's
They
still.
still have
And I'm not
BZ.
gonna shit on him, but it's like we all have just talked about how Nealon's not known
Uh-huh.
for being that star player. You pick up Hex, who, I mean, I'm not gonna say he's bad either, but Shake already said earlier, is he going to be able to hang? That's a big risk if you're trying to make it through to the major. You've got
Yeah.
a new coach in here. You've still got a couple of inconsistent players who haven't performed. I think right now the best looking player on that roster is Automatic. Funny enough,
Automatic's
You
actually been
need-
playing good. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
need more. Like
Good
that.
take,
That wasn't
good
enough
take.
in the past.
I go with your take right there, where like they need more, but I say give them like time to see what they're doing, because they might be doing the project like dipping down to the well, see what fits. So I give them like a solid 6.
But they don't have time.
No,
Yeah,
I
they don't
don't
have time
buy
right now.
that either, man.
I mean,
Like,
I know.
Breeze and
They
Cirque-
don't have time.
Breeze and Cirque have been contracted on this team for like
Uh-huh.
so long at this point, and it's always been like let's break out the milk cartons and say like we're missing Breeze and Cirque like every tournament, every single
Mhm.
time, and it's been like what New York was like ages and ages ago at this point, and if you don't have a star opera in today's meta, it's just not gonna cut it. Like I don't
Yeah.
think it's gonna work at all.
Well,
I mean,
remember
honestly-
that duo we reported earlier that their contracts end at the end of September. So I
Right.
think if you don't make it to the major, then that's when you gotta like if you don't make it to the RMR, then you have to offload them, right? Like
Oh
If
yeah.
they don't make it to the RMR, they're done
That's
for sure.
yeah.
Could
Something's
they be any
happening.
worse than the old lineup though?
No.
Huh?
Exactly.
They're not worse than
in the old lineup.
But if you're EG, you're wasting all of this money on
I
this team, and if it's getting diminishing results after you spend all this money bringing in new players, and it's like you may as well just completely start from scratch. Like I'm sorry, like Hex,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Nealon, but like you got to do something eventually. Maybe keep Automatic, and that's it. For me, it's always I look at like the optics of when you're assembling a new roster, and like what do you say, and do you think? I think one of the things that eternally frustrates me about EG is I don't think they have anyone that exists who's willing to like justify the existence of their roster and to explain why they do what they do to the community. When you have a team like Liquid, when they bring someone like Graham or they bring someone like OC onto the squad, they explain like, oh yeah, our vision is we need to find the next best NA opper. We think he can fit the bill. When they add Graham, they say, okay, he's the best player, one of the best players on Triumph. We're adding him in to, just be like to potentially be a backup rifler when eventually Nitro leaves the roster, stuff like that. But with all of EG's roster changes they've made since honestly bringing on the original EG remix roster in January, they've been complete radio silence. They make no efforts to justify like why Nealon's been brought from Kazakhstan across the globe to play in America, and it seems very worrying to me and almost incompetent that you have all this staff and you have this huge infrastructure, but no one's sat down for an interview, or no one sat down and made a YouTube video where it's like, yes, we brought in Nealon because of his unique approach to B site pushes on Mirage or something. Like even the basics of what did EG see in Nealon, no one's really told us, so we're just left to speculate.
Do you think it's literally just like we need an IGL, we need somebody to fill in before the major kind
But
of
why?
deal?
But why Nealon though? Like, there's tons of European, IGLs who are sitting in free agency right now, and it's like,
Maybe just money. Maybe he was just
What-
the cheapest option.
I mean, there's tons of free agents. There's no way they would have paid a buyout from K23 to get Nealon. I don't know. I feel like just on the bench, or not even on the bench, like just in the free agent pool in Europe, there's plenty of people right now.
right? Like it's so strange. I know who said earlier. They said Hepa was
Yeah.
pushed to move. Then he should be the one coming out, because as far as the public is aware, he was out of the roster for like 4 months. But has he secretly still been working with them and making roster decisions? And if so, why is your analyst making roster decisions when you've supposedly built up this whole like managerial system with Valens, with Mad Cow, with all these people? Why is the Spanish analyst making the decision to sign a Kazakhstani IHL? And how does he get the sign off? Like, there's no justification or explanation coming from the EG org. They, decline all interviews. Their players have to be radio silence on Twitter about everything. Like, there's no interactive component of reassuring the community, because there are EG fans out there in the world. Like, we act, like there's not EG fans, but there's dozens of them, even, of people who want to see, Cirque and Breezy and all these and Automatic are famous players they want to see succeed. But there's no, they don't care what the community perception is of the team for some reason.
I just want to clarify as well, though. I think Heba was the one to suggest him initially, but he wasn't the one to make that decision. That would have been Valens, as far as I know. But still, yeah, it's a strange situation.
Definitely is.
Another thing I want to touch about, or just touch on before we move on from EG, is like what's happening to EG Carpe Diem, right? They've lost Hex now, who's promoted to the main team. They've presumably not brought back Class A to the roster. I mean, that was the team, let's be honest. In terms of firepower, it was that duo. Sure, Wiz has his games, but like, same for Chop. It's just, I don't know. I don't see the firepower there. Bring in Stanislaw is interesting. Because maybe it allows Walco to develop under somebody else and then kind of like actually have a trickling of information in NA for once, from IGL to IGL, and maybe he gets to frag a little bit better since he's not leading. But I don't know, where's the firepower on this team now? Who do they pick up?
I think they have to look at someone from Gaming Gladiators, maybe Georgie, honestly, that can just take over a game. There's
I don't see them like replicating whatever they did at ECL last season. It's like really hard to do it at this stage. I mean, you hit the nail on the head, Frog. Like there is no firepower on this team. It's like, who's really gonna call on this team? Is it gonna be Stanislaw's team, or is it still gonna stay Walco's? Like, there's just so many question marks about this that like I feel like CD's kind of just lost its identity altogether, and now we're just going.
From our reporting on the topic, what we understand, like the way DustUS understands it, the way I understand it, is moving forward, this will be Stanislaw's team. Like, he will be making the calls. Okay. He will be the full IGL for the squad. Like, Welcome might do some mid-rounding, but presumably moving forward, it's Stanislaw's team. And you look at it, and there have been rumors swirling that, Rush is sitting on the bench of EG now. Does he want to, reunite with Stanislaw? I mean, it doesn't solve the firepower problem, but it solves, like, it gives, Stanislaw a very good piece for this team. So it's something for them to definitely think about.
I think if Rush went to that team, I mean, he would definitely fill in a role for firepower. Like, he's playing at a lower scene. He should be able to definitely take the shoes of Hex, But I mean, at the same time, if you bring in Stanislaw, you have Welco there is like, who's another IGL. I mean, like, the firepower should be, eventually you're going to have to make another move, I feel like, to kind of keep up with the firepower in ECL to be like a winner of the division.
I mean, I think Rush would definitely be the best like replacement for Hext if that's what happens, but I don't think that there is another NA player that is like 1-for-1 as good as Hex would be right now on this team. So I don't think that you can look at another NA player and get like a suitable replacement for Hex when it comes to fragging. They would somebody that would need a little bit of time, but I don't think you do bring on somebody like Stanislaw and have him just like, not call. Like, I think that he's definitely going to be, there to call and to teach Welco and to help, just the whole team. I mean, it's kind of, as you guys touched on earlier, the trickling down of like information. Like, I know, speaking for myself, the only person I ever learned from in the entire scene was Steel, and that's because I was on a team with him for 4 months, and it's like, the entire career I've had to figure everything out by myself, and none of like the tier 1 players really talk or do anything involving the tier 2 scene. So I think that this will be like a huge opportunity if Falco wants to go back to calling, to kind of learn from Stanislaw and learn, tier 1 approach and what works, and even just, boiling it down to schedule, match day prep, all that stuff is really nice to have just from the experience perspective.
I will say, playing with Stanislaw, it was actually a really good experience, and like for me, I learned a lot, even though it was like only a little bit of time. I mean, it was a really great experience, honestly. Really enjoyed it, and I just learned so much, and I learned a lot in that like small amount of time, honestly. A lot of eye-opening things.
Well, that's good to hear. Now, one person we didn't talk about was Clasia. Is this the second time he got removed from the RBG EGCD squad for his attitude, M&Ms?
It would be, yeah. Reportedly that he's been removed for reportedly attitude issues and disappointing attitude issues. So I would say that, yeah. I mean, it's like he's still really young, right? Like he's been playing since he's been 15, and he's basically just been like a complete gamer, degen gamer for this whole time since he's been like 15. But it's like it's so disappointing to see. I mean, it's so disappointing to see from him because like theoretically, let's say Klazia makes his way back on. If Klazia was never cut, you just had Sanasaw, and then you have him call and with those pieces, and then that roster is like the straight mustard. But now it's just like. And he's on the bench too. Like he's going to be on the bench for some time. And where does he really go after this? Like there's nowhere. I don't really know if there's anywhere he can go where he hasn't already been. Like he could maybe return to Gaming Gladiators when his contract's up, but they'd have to find space for him there. He could go to Northern Forces, but that's a massive downgrade for some of his talent. It's going to be like another 2. I think it's going to be another year or 2 years before we see him really like come back into the scene after he's done some maturing. It's very disappointing.
Yeah, especially because it's the second time, and I mean, it kind of you touched on like to throw away EG is definitely a really bad like sign, especially like in the optics. Like that was such a good opportunity. That is like, especially in the current state of NA, especially they just promoted Hext, so they're showing that this isn't just a team to exist to be like, oh, we're helping save NA. Like it's actually providing real chances to get onto the tier 1 team, and to throw that away is definitely not a good look. I think that Clay's is somebody that has like an immense amount of talent. I know that he like works hard, and I've always thought he's like a really good player, but if he can't fix the attitude problem, then it's definitely something that is just going to be unfortunate, and it's just going to be a waste of talent at the end of the day.
The worst part too is I think he's a player who like knows what his issue is. When I talked to him at not the most recent Frag Chicago, but the one before that, when he was playing with Choco Check, he definitely expressed remorse from being cut from RBG, and he told me that like, hey, reflecting back on it, would do anything to get back onto a real team, because at that time, Choco Check was just pugging with Exotic and all that. It wasn't really functioning like a real team. And he knows that like his attitude is the issue that's holding him back. So you would assume back then in January would be the break for him that would finally, lead him to sort of go on a redemption arc, but it seems like he still has a lot of maturing to do. And I mean, I don't think EG would rehire him. There's Liquid. He's not good enough for Liquid at this time, and I don't think Complexity would, necessarily. I don't think Complexity makes sense either. So it's just gonna be back into the ECL grind for him once again.
I mean, maybe eventually EG will go back to him. I mean, he's gonna be under contract for a while. Maybe in the time period he changes a lot. I mean, it's just what Valen sees or like what they see. I mean, I'm sure there's gonna be openings like that will come around.
Yeah.
So.
This has definitely like even though like the RBG or the Choco Check, what you brought up M&M's was his down point. I think this is like the lowest of the low, and hopefully he can bounce back from that. So he's an amazing player. So let's move on to Complexity. They benched Junior and signed Halzer. We'll start off with Platin. What are your thoughts on this move?
I think that it should have happened. It's been a long time coming. There's been some pretty major issues with just how he's been approaching the game alongside JT. You can definitely see that there's clashes with how he wants to approach the game. And I don't think that's necessarily like his fault. Like in the grand scheme of things, the team just doesn't work for him. And I think that his motivation is probably at an all-time low, especially with how the community treats him. And I'm hoping that he kind of goes back and plays with Shake, because that's the best I've ever seen him play. And I hope to see more of it. I mean that's personally how I see this. I think he just needs to gain his confidence a little bit more, and maybe we can have a turnaround, because the potential that this guy has shown through multiple tournaments under Triumph and Bad News Bears, it's like the potential is there. It's just it has not been channeled every time he's gotten the big opportunity, and there's just got to be that right star to align for him to try to break through. I think there's still potential in him for me.
I mean, it's hard for me to talk about like this stuff because I'm like pretty close to everybody on the team, so I don't want to like air things. But I mean, I think that Junior is an incredible talent, and I think that he's like such a good opper. I just think he needs to find a way to become mentally stronger. As you talked about the community, the HLTV, the Reddit, like he's got to find a way to tune all that out, to not let that affect his game. And I mean, just speaking about like Complexity, it's just I don't know, it's just something that didn't work out. There's like a multitude of reasons, but I I don't know. I think that he's still got the talent. I know that he's had 2 unsuccessful runs at tier 1, but I still think he's an incredible opper who can do it. He just needs to find the right fit and the right team, and 100% he can do it. I think
I
that this entire complexity project is definitely one that we had a lot of high hopes for, and I just hope that this is a move that can help them kind of sort of get to that level that we'd like to see. Because I mean, when that team was formed, I mean, it was the 5 like hottest, best upcoming players at their positions. Like, you could not have asked for a better, team, org, all that stuff. And so I think we all want to see this team succeed, and I just hope this move can help that.
I wonder what the social dynamics were like on complexity. It's something that I don't think has been really looked into that intensely. But you kind of look at like every team has little like micro cliques in it, whether it's teams from the same players from the same nationality that hang out together, or people who are friends from previous teams. But you have the core of the roster, which is Extra Salt. Then you have Grim and Junior. I'm kind of wondering if he just needs like a pal on a team to activate him, because on Furia he was socially isolated. On complexity, I don't. Obviously all NA players know all NA players because there's only like 30 of you guys running around. But ultimately, like, I wonder if he just needs someone who's willing to like advocate for him and advocate for his space on the team. Like Paladin said, there was sort of a clash between between what JT wanted the team to sort of look like and the roles which Junior would fit into. And I mean, do you see, Alan, has the way JT has been utilizing Junior, is that drastically different from how you think he needs to be used to activate him as a player?
I think that he has very similar freedom, but I don't think he utilizes it as much as he would on my teams, and I don't think he's as confident making the plays that he wants to that he is on my teams. But I think that JT does give him freedom, and he utilizes him in a very similar vein. But I mean, like, kind of fundamentally with the way that ops are utilized now, it is hard for Junior to have success, because the way the complexity does things is they do run like a lot of strats, and it's a lot of set stuff, and they haven't been winning. And T-side opping is definitely really tough if your team isn't winning, or your team isn't progressing to kind of favorable or even mid-round situations. And so you look at oppers, and they're mostly supporting execs, they're playing post plans, they're going for opening picks. So I think that he's like sort of doing the same stuff, but you also do rely on some team success when you're opping, and that's been a struggle for them.
Let's look at the oh, go ahead, Frog.
I was just gonna say, what about Halzerk? Like, that feels like a bit of a weird pickup for me, just because, like, drawing a comparison to another EU opera that was brought in a while back, Cirque, right? Cirque was kind of unknown, right? He was a up and coming talent. Halzerk, I mean, we've kind of seen what he can do, and that was carry the corpses of the former NIP guys for 2 years, and now
All right, relax. Forest wasn't that bad. Relax.
Sure, okay, but like
Hoping.
it's just, is he the right fit for this team? I mean, like, we kind of saw, I feel like, his peak. I'm not saying he can't perform better in NA, but like, I don't know that he's necessarily the most. I mean, probably better than any NA opper. Don't get me wrong. I feel like an import was probably the play here, just because, like, beyond OC, NA opper is like what, minus? I guess that's maybe the next one coming up. I don't know. Like,
Slight, Cyrex,
yeah,
maybe.
I suppose. But like,
Danny sometimes, only on certain
Yeah,
teams.
I'm up and now again.
I don't know.
Not on Friday.
Back in the game.
My off's pretty nice.
Not on a Friday. It's not.
Yeah, I don't know.
What do you guys' take on Halzerk?
I mean,
I think it would be good.
Yeah, I like it personally, just because from a business perspective, he's a free agent getting let go by Dignitas, so that makes sense. I think that he is generally, from what I've seen from, like, the face cams and the player cams and blah blah, he's a fiery personality, and I think somebody to give that kind of boost of energy to a team that frankly needs a lot of energy right now and a lot of like motivation to succeed, I think is super important. And I think that he hasn't really had the right opportunity to play consistent tier 1 stuff, and since there'll be a partner team complexity, like, there will be opportunities for him to actually have every fight against tier 1 opposition. And I don't think he got that at Dignitas. Like, the biggest tournaments that he did was what, like the showdowns, and they would get eliminated in like the first
And
round.
the Snow
like,
Sweet
every
Snow,
time.
yeah, like,
Yeah, it's not real. I don't think it's a good enough indication as to what Halzerk's level is. I think giving him a fair shot in this kind of, like, you don't really have to put too much stock in if you're Complexity because you did pick him up as a free agent. I'm pretty sure like they wouldn't be paying him the craziest of salaries. I don't. It's a very like low risk play, and I think that it has a pretty high upside if it does work out.
I mean, like he already showed that he can play at European level. Like he didn't play a lot of tier 1 teams, but he played some, and like obviously he didn't go that like bad. But I mean, like tier 2, he like kind of destroyed in Europe, honestly.
Totally.
So I mean, obviously Junior wasn't doing that well, and I mean it's probably the safest move you can make. I mean, there's only so many options. Like there's no one from NA really, and then after that, who are you gonna go with? You have to get someone from Europe, and no, you're not gonna get any top offer from Europe. Besides, you have to look for someone that's like just got released, and no other offers are gonna leave their team for Complexity. Let's be honest, no one in the top 30 probably will. So
Yeah, and then I think the other perspective that you could take is that, well, now you're kind of siphoning off the one quote unquote issue that everybody is suggesting Complexity is having issues with, and that's the opping. Well, if this goes wrong with Halzerk also not providing results, well, then that's when you can kind of start to turn to the core of the team and say like, okay, well, is it the true identity of the team that's messed up, or is it the opping issue? And if it is just an opping issue, then hey, problem solved. You spent as little money as possible, and you've gotten a crazy upside for it. And if not, now you've pinpointed the issue. Maybe you switch to a different IGL. Maybe you abandon the NA project. Like there are so many different avenues that you can go with as little effort. With picking up Halzerk, I think.
What do you guys rate this move?
I give it an 8.
Solid
8, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, understanding that this is like a budget team and that they aren't looking to spend the insane amount of money they did with the previous squad, like it is the most pragmatic move. It's not exciting, but it's a good move straight up.
I mean, there wasn't really many options though. I mean, you have to go with it.
One thing I'm curious what you guys are thinking is we asked the question with EG, what do we think about their major prospects? What do you guys think about, like, I think they'll make it to the RMR again. I mean, there's no reason they shouldn't make it to the RMR. Or do they have an RMR spot already? I can't remember.
No.
I think they'll make it to the major, honestly.
I agree.
definitely
think
could.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the field is too weak for them to not make it through. At least when I say weak, I mean in comparison to the caliber of team that Complexity is. And the last go around that they had at the RMR, I didn't think that they had major issues. Obviously, they went through a lot more like just ups and downs emotionally. But I think that once they hit their stride when playing against North American teams, like I feel like that's when they get their mojo back and they at least have the confidence and momentum to get into the major. Now, what do they do with the major? I think the jury's still out on that. I think we need to see them at fall for Blast Premier and at EPL and see what they have to offer, because that is where we'll get to really see whether or not these personalities fit together and if there's a future for this core in general, I think.
I mean, the one thing that kind of sucks is when they go to Blast, they instantly play
yeah.
Are they in the group?
Navi. Yeah, they instantly play Navi.
Group.
I mean, same with fucking Hex. I mean, I know we already talked about it, but first game he's playing is against FaZe. Like, I mean, it's just unlucky for both of them to like at least try something new and then play against the best two teams in the world.
I mean,
the good thing is it's not the elimination completely, right? It's like the seeding or whatever.
It's
so hopefully they get like a more reasonable knockout stage or like just a favorable matchup, but they've just been dealt a really shit hand.
I mean, until they prove that they're a successful team, they're always going to be a low seed in all these tournaments. I mean, that's kind of like I mean, that's what every team runs to. There's usually just a few open qualifier spots to kind of, soften the blow. But like, I don't know, like especially with these closed events like Blast, where it's just the invite teams. Like until they prove that they're one of the top teams, they're always going to be playing the FaZe and Navi first round.
I think it's a good test, honestly. Not even just to say, like, we can all be real here and pretty much expect them to lose their opening matches, but that's not what I'm expecting to see from them. I just want to see how they hold up, because I feel like there's a lot of teams, especially like with NA prospects there, who might get in their own heads and say, holy shit, we're about to play Navi, and just kind of shit the bed because of that fact. So I want to see if they're able to just mentally stay in it, because if they can, then there's going to be a lot of room for them to improve on and be able to stay in future games and build off of.
If Dazzle can beat Simple, anybody can.
Though, I mean, I think JT, Jesus, yeah, I think a different time, a different Navi. I think with like JT though, I think him and his troops have been around the block long enough where they're not going to be super scared of playing, European top European opposition. I just am kind of curious to see the degree to what under this new system to what JT is able to do as an individual, because we don't expect a lot from him as an individual. But if he gets outright bullied on the server at Blast, it kind of makes you wonder, like, is he producing enough and a team that's already fragging deficient? And I think that'd be sort of the next avenue you'd have to go to, is like look at JT's spot in the team if they fail, to do something productive in the last 5 months of the year.
I mean, they look to him for a lot of openings as well, right? Like, he's got a pretty integral like identity to this roster, even just on the server, like when it comes down to like clicking heads. So even that, like, if he doesn't have success there, then it's just like really dire straits. So in my eyes, I think he's the next guy on the chopping block. I agree with you, M&Ms.
All right, I think
Yeah,
we hit on
I agree with that
complexity.
too.
I think we hit on complexity pretty well. We got a shit ton of roster moves to go on. And we got the big one, another big one hitting up, and that's G2, adding JKX and Hooksy. I want to throw this off the Frog to start it off. What do you think on these moves?
I mean, I think it actually shows a bit of growth from G2 management. Instead of just throwing money at the problem, they actually thought about it and went, what IGL would actually benefit our team and our structure right now? They didn't just go for the biggest name. They didn't go for clout. They didn't go for, the most hype person. They went for Hooksy. And I think Hooksy could actually do quite well in this team. It obviously, leaves to be seen if Nico will sort of respect that. I mean, I think it's a little like Dawn. I'm sure Nico's not actually out here spitting in his IGL's face every game, but ultimately, it leaves to be seen if that will really work out long term. And JKS is also an interesting addition for me, provided that's actually happening. Because again, role wise, I think it kind of works. It's not necessarily the sexiest move, but it might actually get them wins. It might actually push them up to winning titles, because I mean, when was the last time they won an event, like 2019 or something?
Actually, I think 2016,
Marseille,
believe it
yeah?
or not.
It was
Oh,
that Marseille
jeez.
tournament of the French lineup.
Are you sure? I thought you're talking about like the ESL 1 Marseille or IEM Marseille,
Yeah.
right?
No.
That was
I'm thinking it was DH Masters.
if you don't count. Okay, so if you don't count Blast like Premier regular seasons, which you shouldn't because it's first through third,
Yeah.
the last S tier event they won. Now get this shit. Strap in. It was DreamHack Masters Malmo 2017.
Woo.
Right, Malmo.
When G2 consisted of Shox, Body, NBK, Kenny, and Apex. So it's been such a long time since they've won a trophy that their team bears no relationship to this team anymore. So effectively, you can say like G2 has never won a title since they've gone
No, but
international, which is
What do you
kind of
mean? They won
embarrassing.
the Battle of Betway versus MIBR last year. Ooh.
No, I'll push back in the sense that they're not throwing money at the situation. JKS did not have a cheap buyout, from
Yeah.
what I saw, and that is just it is again it is a big time move to spend the money on JKS. I think their CT sides will definitely get better, and that was a sore lacking point. But it is I think all of the pressure is on Hooksy at this point, and whether or not he can kind of rally the troops and make a cohesive T side narrative, because one thing that Alexi B was very good at was calling mid rounds, and their mid rounds looked very, very lackluster when they were playing on G2. And if Hooksy can find the potential that Nico and Hunter have shown time and time again, even Monacy as well, like the sky's the limit for this team. Obviously, his style fits perfectly on this team. Like the theory and like the on paper stuff about G2 in this roster makes a lot of sense, but it's all and the thing is the last roster also made a lot of sense on paper, but it never actually amounted to anything beyond that Katowice final. So I think it's a very like wait and see what happens, because I think they still need to like prove themselves in the server before we can really like say anything. Like I it's really hard to speculate about G2 in this day and age because they're just so all over the place.
Hey,
I
Shake,
think the weight lies on Nico's shoulders at this point. You've gone. I mean, G2 has spent a shit ton of money. They've gotten players that are like objectively amazing players. Hunter, Nico, Monazy as your working core. Now you're adding JKS, who is a clear upgrade to Jax, and you're adding Hooksy, who should fit what Nico wants to do on a server better. It definitely seems like he has a controlling interest in the way these roster moves go. And if we're gonna end, he's been with the team he's been with G2 for almost 2 years at this point in October. And if he hasn't delivered any trophies at that point, it kind of makes you wonder, if you give him everything he wants and he can't succeed, is that everyone around him's fault or is that his fault?
Yeah, I think I agree with you. The pressure's definitely on him just because it's been so long. And now you look at, Kerrigan, there was a big dynamic with Kerrigan and FaZe and him kind of pushing Kerrigan out. So until G2 wins games, I think that Nico will always be under the most pressure because that's just how his whole career has been, especially like if he was more of a player like, a Rops where he wasn't as involved in the decision making, the IGLing and stuff like that, we might look at it differently, but he is involved in all that stuff, and so part of the responsibility will follow him regardless of if he's actually the problem or not.
I mean, the last IGL he won and he, silverware with was Kerrigan. So did conflict breed excellence in that? Do you think having IGLs that sort of just like don't push back and force him into a system is what leads to success, or does he need to be completely unleashed like under someone like Hooksy?
Has anyone ever really talked about Nico? Like any like IGLs like talked about him? Like any issues with Nico? Like
I'm not sure if any IGL would have just outed him like
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
just straight up.
There were reports.
But yeah, it
Kerrigan.
was all a lot of reporting about what he's done, and the kerfuffles
Mhm.
just kind of spawned when Kerrigan was out the door. But like, I mean, I do agree with you guys. There's a lot of onus on him to just perform at this point, because even his individual form's kind of dipping. The kind of impact that he had is not as much. Like I think the best tournament that he's had, at least recently, was probably the spring finals. But they didn't achieve that many great results there either. So even if you just look at it from a player perspective, there's also an issue there. Like we're not getting the same level of consistency that we used to have from Nico, and that's been clearly showing even in that department when they're in like those really tight situations where they just can't close it out because individuals just go missing.
I do think that this team has the blueprint though of a very successful team, because if you look at kind of a lot of the top tier teams right now, it's that they have three very, very capable players, star-like players. They have one IGL that just kind of runs around, gets information, pretty much just
Mhm.
intentionally feeds every game.
Yeah.
And then you have like kind of one supportive element who you kind of want to have a little bit of upside in terms of fragging, like a Perfecto. And JKS, he might not be in his prime anymore, but he was a star back in the day. You know that he can deliver on the server. We saw what he did with FaZe. Like, if he can just be that supportive element who frags well, like, you have the star power coming out from Nico. You have the star power coming out from Hunter. And if Modesty can continue to develop and build, then, they have the blueprint to be a very successful team.
To add on what you're saying, Shake, with JKS, I saw it on Reddit post that 1-for-1 for positions where Jax played. He fits in perfectly where Jax plays. So he's going to be a great addition. As for Hooksy, are you guys worried about Hooksy's individual skill? It was like a 0.73 or something.
Not I don't think
he'll be
G2
alright.
need it.
He'll be alright.
They have all
Okay.
the pieces they need. Like they've got literally every single person who can frag out other
If
than an
he's-
IGL. I don't think fragging's ever really been the problem.
If he's if he's the one, what a lot of IGLs do, they'll just go in first too. And if he's going in first, you're running behind, or you have fucking Nico and Hunter behind you. Come on.
Yeah, you have some of the best trade fraggers in the world on your team. I don't
It
think
won't matter that much.
I don't think that ever was gonna matter. It's all about cohesion to me. That's I think the main issue with G2 at the moment. And hey, if they can show that kind of cohesion, there is no stopping this team. This team will be in that conversation of top 3 easily.
How would you guys grade this lineup?
I think an 8.
8?
Yeah.
Because it's all
Yeah, I'd
dependent
say,
on
like-
how it always works. I feel like that's every G2 roster move nowadays.
Yeah.
It's like it's always a good move, but it never ends up working.
All right.
Mhm.
I think G2 made the good moves. Let's move on to another big.
Hold on, before you do that, can we talk about Boomich?
Oh, the Boomich thing.
Oh, Boomich.
You want to take this M&Ms?
You can take it if you want.
He's off the boil. His fucking box is completely gone. Like, I think I don't think he really returns the tier whenever. I think he had a shot and he blew it by what's the phrase? Don't
Becoming
put your
Johnny
dick
Depp.
in crazy, as they say. Like
Yeah.
he's making music videos. He's like dyed his hair. He's wearing like the bright floral shirts. He's arguing with like Carlos on Twitter. Like, and I think he doesn't understand that he's never played on a team that speaks English as far as I can remember. So it's like and he's like, "Oh, I'm totally ready to go and be a tier 1 IGL and speak English in an English speaking team." But people also forget that it's not so much that Boomich individually is an amazing IGL. It's that Boomich, with Blade standing over his shoulder and helping him out with like the tactics and with his strat book, is what makes them an amazing duo. So if he's acting like this, he doesn't speak English amazingly, and he's lost like the part of his almost brain that enables him to be a tier 1 IGL. I don't really know like what his future is, and kind of doing stuff like this where he's like, oh yeah, G2 was totally gonna sign me and it fell through, like, is not a good look for you.
So
I
did
feel like everybody
Carlos?
kind of has to prove it twice.
Yeah.
You have to
Did-
prove that you can do it once, and then when you leave or you have a roster change, everybody doubts you again. And if you can prove you can do it again, I think that's when everybody kind of gives you the
Yeah,
benefit of the
the
doubt. Like,
Kerrigan
especially with
effect.
Kerrigan right
Yeah.
now, yeah. Like everybody, they like this redemption arc. The fact he's winning proves that he is the IGL. Like he is the GOAT IGL. Obviously, like look at Glaive. They're winning 4 majors, but again, like you have the stuff where he had the period where he won everything, and now people doubt him again, right? Can he do it without device? And he's not winning recently, so there is like that doubt there, and there's no disputing what he's done in the past and all that. But I think people respect Kerrigan a lot more because he's done it twice.
It sucks that like all the stuff that Blade is doing with Electronic, and Electronic looks so good as an
Yeah.
IGL. It's like it tanks your stock even more that they're succeeding without you, and they don't have a quote unquote like storied IGL on their team. I think it feels curtains for Boomage.
He's kind of a one-hit wonder in a way too. That he didn't join Navi on the onus that he was an amazing IGL. He joined on the onus that Zeus, an amazing IGL, would train him how to be a good IGL. So his pedigree is basically his ability to absorb Zeus's knowledge and work with Blade, rather than the fact that like if they swapped out Boomich Zeus for Boomich straight out the gate, you're like, oh, that's sexy. Like that's proves that he's the new CIS hotness. But his resume is kind of less thick than it appears to be on the basis of winning a major.
Speaking to
Yeah.
move on a little up to G2 stuff, let's hit on to the other like EU powerhouse before we mention the fall of Boomich, and that was Ence benching Hades and then Senpaius from Movistar Riders, and there's also the rumor of Spinks leaving for Vitality.
I think this was out of nowhere, man. I don't know where the hell this came from, to be honest with you.
I didn't think the Ence roster is that bad. I think they were just kind of like getting unlucky lately. Honestly, like a lot of the games were close, and I think they really need to make a change.
It
Problem
felt
with the
like
Ence roster is they don't have any direct invites to anything, so that team is
Yeah.
essentially just waiting to get picked apart.
Well, they're an EPL partner though, so
Are they?
Yeah, they're
they are an
Oh.
EPO. Yeah.
there. You
I
go.
just knew they weren't in Blast. I remember that was the big
Yeah,
spiel, but I didn't know
qualifier,
that they were
qualifier for qualifier.
in EPL.
Well,
It kind of sucks though for them. I mean, they had a really good roster.
I
just-
think
I
the
think-
issue was like a fatigue thing. Like when their bad results are slowly coming, like towards the like very close to the player break, and it feels like I think the reason why this is happening is because Spinks is out the door. So they're kind of like, if Spinks is going to Vitality, then we kind of have to reanalyze the structure of our team, and we're now losing a sore amount of firepower. And Hades was obviously a big issue in terms of consistency. Like it was a far cry from when he was succeeding with them during EPL way back when. But I think adding Sunpice is kind of like, I don't know, it feels like a lateral move, because I think another big issue about Sunpice is his consistency. So to me, it's like this is going to be a real test for Snappy to kind of see if he can do it with a new like star-ish player, a bunch of star-ish players on his team, and if he can do it or not will be like really interesting, because I think that you've kind of lost a huge chunk of like the big heavy hitters on your team, and now you've kind of have to prove it again with a new set of players.
I think they're trying to recreate him in the aggregate, essentially. Like
Mhm.
they have Sunpius, who is going to be, 0.05, 0.1 better than Hades, hopefully, and then you're not going to get a player that's as good as Sphinx. He's not going to, you're not going to get anybody that's going to be as fragging power as impactful. So if you just get a player that's like able to do their job and is, like a 1.1, you're kind of able to balance it out as opposed to like losing it all, right?
Speaking of Sphinx, like going to Vitality, the rumor is going to Vitality. It's not closed yet, but it's pretty much certain he is.
Nell doesn't get these wrong a lot, so it's like something
Yeah.
I feel like you can trust.
Yeah, just like you want the for sure link, to be confirmed. What's Ence how Ence gonna round that lineup up? Without Sphinx?
I can speak a bit about that. I mean, I believe the HLTV article you have pulled up there mentioned Favin Faster, which obviously now we know is not happening, and Lounx or Launex.
Yeah.
I think that Launex would have been the best. From my understanding, it's not happening. But in terms of like future, like Spinks was good before joining Ence. Obviously, we all know that, but he really showed what he could do on Ence, and I think that would have been the same for Launex. But I don't think, from what I've heard, he's not going to get the opportunity, which sucks. The player I've heard they're bringing in is also equally good in terms of like high firepower, but like replacing Spinks in the form he's been in right now is just kind of impossible. Hence why I think they kind of had to make the extra change and go for a better opper. Just because like if you're gonna lose that much firepower, you're likely gonna have to restructure the way you play. And then if your opping's just not on par with everyone else out there right now, you might as well make that extra move and grab Sunpius. Whether or not he's the best choice, I'm not sure, but
Yeah.
we'll see.
Are Ents taking a chance on Sampaius, even though he showed like back-to-back good tournaments, like he's peaking at the right moment? What do you guys think of Sampaius?
I think it's
It
a
might be.
risk.
Yeah.
I think it's a risk because if you look beyond this, like when he's been in the big time situations, when he was at the last stage that they qualified for in Stockholm, he dropped off a cliff and Movistar did absolutely nothing in that stage because he just disappeared. There are tournaments where he has crazy peaks like he did with that back-to-back these back-to-back tournaments, but the question is how long can he keep that up? Because I think Ence's biggest issue is that they need an opper that is consistent. And if they have the same issue that they had with Hades with Sun Pius, it's not going to be good enough, I think. And that's the real issue that's been holding them back from winning championships and stopping themselves at semifinals. Like that is the most important thing, is how consistent Sun Pius is going to be. Now he has to speak English as well. Like he's not like he's been playing on Spanish teams, right? So that's going to be a tough call to say either. Like I don't know how that's going to fare.
How would you
Yeah.
guys rank this lineup? This move. For,
Oh man.
I mean, the roster kind of got picked apart, but I mean, it's like probably like a 6.
Yeah, I go with like a
it's
6.
Soft 6, yeah.
It's the unfortunate situation of like they weren't really in control here. If they could have kept the things the way they were, I think they would have. But
They didn't even play
Vitality
those.
came knocking.
They didn't even play the bad in tournaments, like honestly. But
Not
like,
at
I
all,
mean,
yeah.
if they're getting offered, hundreds of thousands of dollars for like a buyout for like Spinks, for example, like I mean, the org's gonna take it 100%. Like,
I don't think they really have the power to like resist it either.
Yeah.
Like they're good.
Yeah.
Ence is the smallest probably Louvre partner that was able to make their way into the semi-franchise. They kind of have to take what offers they get, and they kind of have to choose players that are like. It's a risky move, but they kind of have to choose players that aren't as obvious to the other orgs, because otherwise they'll lose the bidding war every time. So where we see like an org, like a bigger org would never choose someone who has like a 40% chance of not being that amazing as an opper. But for Ence, a player with only a 40% chance of failing is amazing for them if the 60% chance is being amazing, because otherwise they won't be able to get an opera. There's not like we saw with Complexity. There's not really operas you can get that are cheap on the market and are also amazing.
No,
like
yeah,
it's a
there's literally
unicorn.
no one.
There's
no one on the market.
Speaking, moving on from Ence, let's hit on to the other with Navi saying, with Blade confirming that SDY is staying to the major. What's
He's
your
earned
guys?
it.
I think he's earned it, but
He did well. He's showing that he can fit in, and he's like brought Navi to what looked like an entirely new level at the time that we saw him. And that was just after a couple of weeks of him being on the roster. Imagine after working with him for the whole ass player break.
I mean, it's a super like it's not that risky for Navi as a whole, right? You've kind of set a timer for SDY of saying we want to win championships, we want to break that phase of Navi rivalry and start winning stuff. And if we can't do it by Rio, then obviously there has to be changes made. And I think it's this perfect like risk adverse option for Blade and Navi that like, hey, if he doesn't do it, then it's like you've given him a fair amount of tournaments. What you've given him EPL and what the fall groups as well. What other tournaments are there? There's not that much before Rio, but they've got a couple of showings at least to show that hey, this whether this or not will work in the long run or not. But I think this is a pretty safe thing to do.
Oh yeah,
all
it
things
is.
considered.
He's not supposed to be like the star of the team or anything like that either. He's supposed to just kind of do his job.
And he's
I
been doing
mean,
it, I think.
honestly, if you look at it, they probably could have beaten FaZe in the finals, but I mean, he's not supposed to have like a breakout game or anything like that. But like Bid also didn't have like a insane series too. You know, Bid like plays how he usually does. That doesn't go FaZe way probably, honestly.
So how come they haven't signed him? Are they concerned then?
Well, I think
Probably
if
still
you,
testing it.
if you sign him, then that means you're committing, right? And I
Mhm.
think that they still don't feel completely certain that this is the right move, and I don't blame them, right? Like you see so many different interviews between Simple and Blade and just various players on the team that are like, yeah, he's making a lot of mistakes, but like
Yeah.
he's really been learning and he's like really trying to persevere through it and then clean up his mistakes as much as possible. And even after they lost the final, they were like, yeah, we made a lot of mistakes. Simple was saying that even after winning the MVP.
Mhm.
And I think it's just like you don't have to necessarily lock it down and then look foolish after if it doesn't work. It's kind of like, okay, well, you get all of the upside of having SDY on your team without actually signing him, and you get none of the lash out from the community saying that, well, why'd you sign SDY if you can't win anything? So it's like kind of like a win-win as far as I see it for Navi as an org.
There's really no
Particular-
reason to sign him. Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
there's nothing you gain by signing him. There's only downsides to signing him,
Mhm.
and unfortunately, he is one of the best players that Navi can get. There's not a ton of Ukrainian players that are ready for Tier 1. I would argue there's none that aren't already on Navi. They've said explicitly they won't go for Russian players.
Mhm.
So what does that leave you with? Like, I can't think of any, Kazakh players that are maybe ready. There's no Belarusians that are ready. There's really no one. He is the best player unless you just try someone from your academy side. But, Navi probably looks at the situation and says, okay, we won a major with an academy player we just brought in last time. Are we going to really win that gamble again to merely find someone in our academy program who's ready for Tier 1? I don't think anyone has stood out as, Bit or Mon as he has. So it's like,
I would like to disagree with you there. From working on Academy League this season and speaking to Hedrick, I think he would down the line be a good candidate to promote. Just
how
because,
far
like,
down the
for a
line,
while-
though?
I mean,
think? That's
I think it. The thing is, like, post major, if this doesn't work with SDY, I think he's their backup candidate. Because, as you mentioned, they're not signing anyone from Russia. They're not going to sign anyone from likely Belarus. There's no one really in Kazakhstan to step up. Because I mean, like, since the old Gambit guys, like, there's not really been that many players coming up in Kazakhstan. And I think Hedrick, like, is probably the best next thing. He's really stepped up since being able to kind of like be the star of the show after Monsi and Monsi leaving and all that. And he's currently the primary opper on Navi Junior, but that's not really where he's most comfortable. He would do better as a hybrid. I think he could slot into this team well and give them even more firepower. I don't think that's what Navi needs necessarily, but I think that's kind of maybe what they're weighing up. They want to see if he's ready or if it'll work out with SDY.
I mean,
But
my issue with that is even with Bit, he wasn't completely 100% out of the gates, right? Like I'll try to remind you guys that like
Oh, yeah.
he replaced Flamey on certain maps, right? And
Well, that was dumb. Like, that was
it was dumb, right?
but wishful thinking on their part.
And I think that Hedrick will also need time to just
For sure.
integrate into this lineup and do Tier 1 because look at we already have a little bit of a sample size with when he played on the main roster at EPL, right? And he didn't look that flamboyant. He had a couple clips here or there, but I don't think he was nothing that really jumped off the page. And in my eyes, it's not necessarily that he might be good like a little bit down the road. It's like we want to win tournaments now if you're thinking in Navi's perspective, because you've assembled essentially one of the greatest cores of CIS Counterstrike of all time, and you want to win as much as possible in the shortest amount of time, and that requires the least amount of effort in developing another player. That I would think that keeping SDY is like honestly one of, if not the best move that you can make at the moment. And if not, you have to take a chance on somebody that's a little bit more experienced, and running the risk of trying to develop another player might be really adverse to just them succeeding again, even though the upside of the risk might be pretty good in the long run. I don't know.
I think an issue is just the fact that Navi have an expectation that I don't think is realistic anymore. I mean, M&M's has just talked about how there's nobody really ready to step into the plate and fill in what Navi want, or like fill in a spot for Navi where they can just start winning events. Somebody is going to have to be developed, I think, regardless of who you pick up, whether it's SDY, whether it's Hedrick, whether you go deeper in the CIS scene. Somebody has to be picked up and developed. And Navi, as you said, want to win now. That's not something that I think is realistic for them. Like if they want to win now, I don't think developing somebody is going to be realistic at all, quite frankly. And it's an issue because I think if something goes wrong in these next upcoming events, SDY might get the short end of the stick, when in reality, you just take a little bit of extra time to develop him, and this is going to be a deadly lineup. Or you spend more time on somebody in the future coming to the equation that you're already at now.
Sure.
I think we all are pretty good on I think with Navi, it's a pretty safe roster move. Doesn't really hurt them, and we all agree that like if it doesn't pay out, they can always move on and it's next step, right? They can just get
Yeah.
someone new.
I think
Alright,
they should
let's-
just like see what happens after the major and go from
Exactly.
there.
All right, let's move on to Fnatic, which happened signing on Friday. They added Vasher from what team was it?
Ecstatic.
Static.
Yeah. How would you guys rate that?
Dude, I love this
Let's go,
move.
man.
Like,
Yeah,
Question mark.
Good move.
I
vote
think
for
for
Messi.
Fasher, it's really, really good because oh my god, this guy's been smurfing in Tier 2 Europe for so long now, and carrying a team that like after Ecstatic made the couples of moves that they had to make were just a hollow shell of what they used to be, and Fasher was still performing on that team as well, and I think that you have like a huge firepower upgrade over I think they had Heep, right? If
Yeah,
I'm wrong,
Heep.
yeah,
Yeah.
trialing him.
Yeah.
And I think that is miles better of an upgrade. Now, the other issue that it still is like lingering with Fnatic is how effective is Messi going to be as an IGL, and what can he lead this team again? I think less talking about Fasher, because I think that move as a whole makes a lot of sense. It's more so like, what is Messi going to do on this team, and is he going to be able to lead a complete international lineup again? Because we've seen that there's been issues previously, right, with Alex not being able to lead a team and whatnot, and having to cut him.
I'm just wondering what Fnatic's goal even is at this point, because it feels like they're kind of trying to do a couple of things. Like you've got Fasher, who we've just established, kind of smurfing in Tier 2 and has been for a while. It's like, are they trying to get a roster that's going to be a contender in the future or a contender now? Because it kind of felt like, at least to me, when they picked up Roy and Nikodas, they were trying to like, those were going to be the two players that needed to be established. They wanted to start putting their name in the hat for actual like big names and big events. But then they start picking up all sorts of players from the Tier 2 scene that need to be developed. A roster that looks deadly in the future, but I think as of right now isn't going to do anything.
I mean, like I think the main issue as well for me with a faster pickup is the longevity of this team. I mean, the average age literally now is 25.9, right? Nikodos is a bit younger, so is Messi, but like Crims is 28, Roy is 28, and Fasher is 26. There's no problems, with late bloomers. You can get a few years out of them, just like G2 did with Jax. It's definitely possible, but where's the long-term vision here? Crims is your legacy player. You want to keep him around as much as possible. Nikodos and Roy, they've got a bit of a brand for them, with they're active on socials and they're kind of funny. People like them, sure, but like, are you? I think we can all agree that they're not going to win a major tomorrow, right? It's going to take time for them to even be like a competitor within Tier 1, and by the point they, by that time, are these guys still going to even be on this lineup, or have they all been past their primes?
I think
mean-
Crim's like date on this team is kind of getting closer and closer. I think just because he's had the most clashes with the people on that have kind of cycled through this international thing. It seems like he doesn't even want to be a part of an international lineup anyways. Like every time that we've had something like that, there's been bickering. And then I think if they did, honestly, if they did bring in another IGL, if they did pick up Alex off of the bench and just put him in for Crim's slot, I think this team is still really good. But that is I echo all of you guys' sentiments. There is no identity for this team, and I think that's the biggest issue. It's like, what are we considering Fnatic to be a budget org at this point in time, like fitting into the more like Mouse-esque org situation, or are we going to say like they're like a fringe team, like an NIP that's looking to like kind of get the odd upset and playoff run, and like the crazy semifinal run here or there?
I feel like
I
you
think
can't
they're like a
even.
fringe team.
Oh, go ahead.
Because I mean, you have Nikodos and Roy who got what was it, 9th through 11th at the last major or the major before that, and then they made playoffs of the previous major. So you'd have like two solid pieces. Fasher is obviously a good up and coming player, so like there is a foundation, and it realistically could go either way. But I think that if this team doesn't work out, the Crims for an IGL is the most like logical thing down the road that you're going to look at. But I think Fnatic is just, they're trying to rebuild, they're trying to create some kind of identity, and I think they're just trying to get players that are like good or players that have succeeded and they're just trying to figure out eventually a roster that works. And if they can do that, I mean, this team does have potential. Mezzi's was one of the biggest upcoming players. He's had great events like Fasher, again, upcoming, like everybody recognizes he's played really well. And then Roy and Nikodos proved it in Copenhagen Flames. So like there is a blueprint. There is the ability for this team to be successful. I don't know if they'll be like tournament winners, but to be like a solid tier 1 team, there is that foundation with these guys.
Hey, Shake, I have a quick question because I interviewed Mezzi just on Friday about the idea that like IGL has like a fragging. Being an IGL, your performance and your fragging go down. Do you believe in that?
I think it's real because you're constantly having to do like sacrificial things, or like, I mean, you'll die looking at your radar or just trying to explain things. And again, like it's way different when you just have to focus on your crosshair. I think that there are people that are comfortable calling and fragging, like the ability for me to set up my own plays and stuff like that is definitely a lot more comfortable than when other people are trying to set it up for me. So that I would say like positively impacts my performance, but you do have to focus on a lot of other things. And I do think that overall it makes it harder and worse for people to frag. But in the current day, like I think you need to be able to frag no matter what. Like you need 5 players on the team that can frag and can shoot. Yeah.
Before we move over
I don't
to the next
know. I
topic
think
and
consistency is more of a big, a big issue.
I think, yeah. For me, it's just impossible to rate this move. Like, I know Fasher's good. I know the players on this team are good. But it's just like, Fnatic have been off of the, like, have been irrelevant internationally for such a long time. And they've just been trying so many wacky roster moves that it's like the equivalent of basically saying, like, what if NBK joined Sprout? Like, I'm like, I like NBK. I like Sprout. What happens if I put them together? I have no idea. It's like,
What does Nicki Minaj know about cameras?
All right. So I think that's enough about
it's like when I like look at this roster, I kind of just think like they've missed the last 3 majors. They're gonna try to qualify to the to this major. I mean the major is all important to the ecosystem, but for me it's just this team kind of just reminds me of sort of the late game Cloud9, like the version with like Mixwell and Tens and all those guys, where they fail, they remove a piece, they add a piece, and they just constantly keep adding pieces and turning over until they think they find something that works. And I just don't know like what their grand strategy is and making international roster and all that. It's just all very. I compare it almost to EG and just sort of like a confused, and just their choices don't make a ton of sense to me always.
All right. So we'll have to see how it plays out. So moving forward, Biggs re-signed Tapsin and Gabi until 2027. They cleared up the rumors that Tapsin and Gabi were reportedly maybe even going to G2. Danny, what are your thoughts on this?
I think that's really good, honestly. G2 or not G2. Big hasn't been like they've been always like a top like 15 team, and they've been. I feel like in the last couple of like times they've played, it's been a lot of close series, honestly. And like they're like always a team that you can't take lightly. They will upset the other teams 100%. I don't think they're gonna be like a top 5 team, but maybe in the future they could be with the pieces that they keep. Yeah.
I think
It's
the
like
biggest. Oh yeah, go ahead.
no, you go.
Just I think the best part about this move is like Big has always gotten greater always provided results that are greater than the sum of its parts, and I think that comes down to the amount of work that Tapsin and Gabi have been putting in, and frankly have been putting in even before they were on Big. Like they've been gaining so much chemistry playing together and playing alongside each other for so long that it's like it's so smart to keep these guys around and make them franchise players, make them the face of German CS, and kind of develop all of these new pieces. And whether or not they actually succeed on the team, it's like long term, it allows for this region to stay relevant in CS, which is frankly this region has always been so prominent in this game's history that it's like not having these two along for that ride is kind of a shitty deal. So I'm hoping that they still get the same kind of success where they're bringing out the best of German talent, and they always get the best German talent and try to break through, because they've got some good pieces here as well. Like developing players like Crimbo and Favin, like that's an exciting prospect because they definitely have a lot of years to give. And I think that the depth of Gabi's mind and how he develops younger players is still really fresh. And then Tapsin, it doesn't look like his form is necessarily dropping off either. So I don't know. To me, this makes a lot of sense, and I like that they're doubling down on this whole German
I
angle.
love the timing because what was the timing when everyone's like, "Oh, Tapson and Gabi going to G2," or on Twitter or something on Reddit and stuff. They're like, "No, they're not. It's not gonna happen." And then the next day, they signed him. End the discussion. I just love the timing. Big made like the smartest plan. It's like we're finalizing it. We're gonna announce it. I got a huge on Twitter and everything. So ends all these rumors. That was my take, which I love.
Yeah.
When they did that.
I've mixed feelings about it personally, just because like German CS was important like back in the old days, right? Like 1.6 and stuff. Outside of Big, there haven't really been that many tier 1 German teams within CS:GO, I feel. And I mean, when you think about it, like the last team Tabson represented was NRG with Peter and Fugly, if I'm not mistaken, right? Like that just kind of speaks volumes as to how long he's been with Big. And well, yeah, they've looked good at times, you know, over a lot of periods. And as Paladin put it, like, you know, greater than the sum of their parts. And right now they have probably some of the best talents in Germany on their academy team. But like I still don't really see a future for German CS the way it is, right? There's no one else really kind of challenging that. From what I've heard, Sprout is moving away from German players as well. It's just going to be the big show for forever moving forward, and I feel like that's kind of disappointing for someone like Tabson, because I would have loved to see him kind of go for like a last hurrah. He's getting older, but he's still playing well. Playing on a team like G2 would have been really exciting. As like, okay, I'm gonna win titles. This is how I end my career. It's still possible to do it with Big, and you know, props to him if he does it with like a German team and a project that he's been with since the start. But I don't know how realistic that is.
That would have been a huge hit if Tabson left the G2 for the German scene. Like from what he's done with Big, that would have just been like who do you like? What even happens? You know?
Yeah, there's no one to really replace him at that point.
And like with all the success he's like brought to Big and how consistently they've been so good over these 5-6 years. So let's move on to the French scene. So Heet signed Jax in place of Lucky. We're gonna kick this off to M&M's. What do you think about this
They
move?
are two of the French players in the scene. I can confirm that. I mean, Jax is better than Lucky. That's why G2 cut Lucky first, I think. He's a good supportive element. I think Heat are just kind of an also-ran squad, so all their improvements are going to be very incremental and almost like subtle, like very subtle. I think Jax gets a lot of flack for for being like the least mechanically skilled player in G2, but that's not really his fault. I think his longevity on G2 speaks to his quality as a player. Good move. Not a whole lot to say about it. Heat are kind of just a team that like will win like a local event or will win like an online cup, and you're like, good for them. I'm happy that they're, I'm happy for them. But it's not like they're a team that really exists in the ecosystem of the things people watch regularly with 100K viewers. Where like, oh, they don't fight for trophies, but it's good to have a French team in general.
It's just a team that you hope figures out at some point, and maybe this roster move will do it. But like, you look at Movistar. I mean, that team's been together for a while. Like, you just don't know what you're eventually going to get. And this is a team that one day, 6 months from now, we might just see come out of nowhere and start to make it to the major and qualify for stuff and have a run. Or they might just be a team that's in tier 2, that's a consistent tier 2 team for a while. I don't know.
That's the
You just have to hope that they figure it out at some point.
This core,
kind of what they are now.
Yeah.
I mean, this core was on the cusp of actually qualifying for the major. They were about to eliminate Astralis from that RMR, and like they've shown a lot of really great signs. And I watched them at EPL conference. They looked very good there as well. This core has been together for like over a year and a half, more than that, but by now. And so like it kind of makes sense that like maybe they just want that last bit of experience and firepower to just take them over the top. And I think Jax is a player that could definitely bring that to this team. He's had experience playing with these players previously, right? If I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Navi, I
exactly.
believe.
Yeah,
Navi.
so
He's played with all of them, in fact.
right. So I think it'll work. I think that this could be that last little thing that they need to start qualifying for some of these events a little bit more regularly. And then like if they do well at EPL, right? Like that's when you get a lot of tour points to start getting invites to some of these things, or at least invites to the closed qualifiers. And that's when you can kind of break the cycle because they're caught in a situation right now where they're on the fringe of entering that cycle, but they haven't been able to make that last step.
I think this is a really good move for Jax as well, just because, like, let's be honest, he's likely not got that many years at Tier 1 left in him, or even just in Counterstrike in general, right? He's getting older. He collected his paycheck for, 3 years with G2, made a nice amount of money. Now he gets to just kind of go down a notch, and like, just play for the fun of it. He's comfortable. He doesn't need the money anymore, necessarily. And he just gets to play with a group of people that he actually really enjoyed playing with, because he was benched by G2, with the whole Kenny S debacle a while back. And he played with Double Pony initially, and then he was kind of brought back into G2. And I think these guys ended up going with NBK for a little bit before eventually picking up Exercise. It's kind of interesting to me that Lucky ended up being the guy replaced. Maybe there's a bit of I don't know, disagreements there between Jax and Lucky. Maybe there's some bad blood with G2 stuff. Who knows? But I don't know. I think this is an interesting move for him. From what I heard, things weren't great in the G2 camp with Jax. He was kind of over being baited, to put it mildly. And so hopefully, like, this is just a good vibe for him. He gets to play with a group of players that he's actually wanting to play with, and just kind of maybe help them out along the way.
This is where he broke out, like with this group of guys, where he first drew attention from G2. So maybe he finds his magic again.
Well, it would have been just with Lucky and 3D Max, but yeah.
But yeah. Let's go on to the next French move. MBK Masuta joining Falcons here in place of Kyojin and Kios.
So I don't really know why Kios got kicked from this team. I'm always happy to see NBK on a team. I think that he should not be on the bench ever. He's such a like his name he's been dubbed by a lot of people as the kingmaker. He's been a player that's been able to bring up other players, as selfless as he is, and willing to play as supportive as he needs to be. I like that move a lot, but I don't know about the Masuta one. Maybe like going down a tier might give him a little bit more confidence now that he doesn't have as much pressure of playing on like a Vitality. But I'm not really sure about that. Like, I don't like the Masuta for Kia's angle.
I think the funniest thing about the reporting surrounding all of this is like Nell himself was just sort of like, Nell himself was like, Chaos is being moved from the roster. I don't really know why. That doesn't really make sense.
Yeah,
That's life. Like, I mean, you never know. Like, the thing I could potentially see is Chaos. I think he does speak Russian, and he does speak French.
Oh, interesting.
So because he was originally from Simon and K23.
right.
So
He's
maybe
Ukrainian.
yeah, it could be either just like a role mismatch or a culture mismatch or an attitude mismatch, or he could be going back to the CS scene, or he could be called up to another, European team. Like, there's a lot of options for him. I'm hoping he didn't just get cut for no reason, but because he definitely does deserve to be on this team. So you're hoping that it could just be like an issue rather than like our master plan involves not having him on the team.
I agree with Paladin on MBK. He's such a consistent player. Like what he can bring to the table, like support wise, like and as well as like anchoring certain sites. Like, he's so good. And like the approach, like how he got benched through Mouse for what's his name,
JDC?
guys? Yeah, it was just unlucky for him, because he, like, prior to getting benched, he like popped off on a couple games.
Well,
So-
I thought they looked their best. They looked
Yeah.
like a really, really good org, all things considered, when they had NBK. I don't know why that move happened for JDC. I think that if they kept him on the team, we'd be talking about Mouse in a completely different light at this point. And I think it just wasn't the right time to bring JDC on that team. But that's just my take on it. He's a great player, but I just don't think it's the right fit for him yet, like it might have been for an NBK type.
All right, so will everyone agree that this was kind of mixed opinions on Falcons, but it was overall pretty good?
Yeah.
Yeah, but before we continue, I have to also give a shout out to Refrag again for partnering out with Nart out here, and also you should use the code Nart to save 15%. They're the big spot. They're the big partnership of Nart right now. So thank you, Refrag. The next topic we're gonna hit will be the Flames announced announced that they're gonna let Zyphoon depart and probably go to Sprout.
I mean, he needed a home.
Yeah,
He was the only one that was kind of
he
shit out
needs
of
a
luck
home.
when that roster died.
I feel sorry for him, but at least he's trying to find a home.
I mean, it sucks that people were talking about this guy like really highly, and people were expecting for him to have like some crazy tier 1 upgrade. It's a bummer that he's kind of moving to like a like quote unquote like lower tier team, but I do think that it's like a huge upgrade for Sprout. Like I
Make
think
some
that
moves. They make-
this team can do a lot of damage if this Sprout move goes through. I've loved watching Longs play. Like he's been a phenomenal talent. And I think that if you have a Zyphoon Longs like duo, it's gonna be a really good team to kind of fight through these like ESL Challenger-esque events, and then eventually you'll see them at an EPL conference or whatnot, and I think that's what they'll start doing damage. But I think the biggest question is whether or not they have an IGL in mind.
You
Sprout.
just brought it up. Like since it is
Yeah.
drop down routes, who's gonna be the IGL? The rumor is Refresh.
Yeah.
That's a rumor, but I don't know about that.
It'd be a scary ass team.
So Sprout went full Danish, or
It
no?
sounds like, because
No,
I heard Slacks is a
Rawls
part
was
of their
already
future.
Danish.
Either, yeah.
That was like a
Uh,
reported rumor, but I don't think it's reality because
okay.
Slacks and Lonks are not Danish.
Okay.
This gives me
Rawls
like
is
kind of early Ence vibes, to be honest. Like I think this is a team with a lot of really good, solid international players. I think they were promoting Stare or Lonks, one of them, to IGL. I'm unsure which. When they got rid of Spitty, but like I do think that the only difference is they don't really have like a solid IGL. Like when you bring up Snappy, it was kind of that veteran that bring it all together type stuff. And I just think this is like a very good international team with a lot of firepower. And if they can figure it out, then they could be a team that rises through the ranks and qualifies and actually has a chance to do something.
I'm loving the Sprout. Like Sprout actually made the moves though, and actually they're doing something. I just kind of hope they pick an IGL, or like if Refresh wants IGL, that's scary, but we'll see. How
I
do
mean,
you
I will say
Yeah.
I've heard like Refresh was
Yeah.
like secondary calling ish
Yeah.
on Heroic, so it's not the worst thing in the world, but it is a different kettle of fish when you
It-
try to say like primary call and secondary call. Case in point, Stewie. Like
It could be
I don't even
scary.
have to
It
give
could
any
The
be
names.
weirdest thing about Refresh, this move for him, is this is obviously a massive step down for him because he was on Heroic for years. Like he was on Heroic, or okay, year and a half, close enough.
Mhm.
But he was a very valuable player on Heroic, and the sense that he has the inclination to reinvent himself is very interesting to me because it kind of makes me wonder, was he getting any offers out there before he's like, I'm gonna try being an IGL. I mean, there's not a whole lot of purely Danish squads you can go to. If you don't go to Astralis, or you're kind of out, you're kind of shit out of luck in terms of finding a Danish home of suitable level. But I don't know. It's like I would assume someone like Refresh would have a relatively good rep because he has proven he can play on international lineups as well. So it's very strange that like he's having to take such a hard step down and having to come change to a role that will limit his individual performance, which I think is a pretty important part of his play, of his individual brand. It's all very strange. Especially because Sprout is a team that is always just destined to be picked apart by bigger orgs. That's like their literal role in the ecosystem.
I don't know. I think it makes sense, honestly, when you think about Refresh. It's like, yeah, he could have gone to Astralis, but Astralis already have settled any role that he would have played. So it kind of did feel like if he wanted to stick Danish, he had to change around. So if that's his role, if he just like, if he knew that he had to change around, maybe go to IGL, then I think Sprout makes sense because it's like that'll be more proving grounds for you. And again, you just get picked up when you show what you have to offer. Maybe Astralis does end up going back with you, who really knows, but still they have IGL right now. So I think it's the next best choice. It's like you'd rather be somewhere else proving what you can do than just be homeless sitting on the bench for Heroic or something. So alongside that, this is already a big W for Sprout, who I think already was going fairly far considering the talent they had with themselves. And now they're just adding direct improvements to what they had before. They could actually just be a scary team with this lineup until they get picked apart.
I want to say before we move on, like good luck to Speedy for staying on Sprout for like I think 4 years now.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, it feels like
Yeah, it's a long time.
Yeah,
Well, that's the last founding member, right, from the organization that has now been dropped.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on from Sprout to MIBR with them signing Henny, possibly. Let's kick this off to Shake and then Danny. What do you guys think about this move?
I don't know, man. I think MIBR is struggling to find their identity. I was very skeptical of cutting Wood when they did, even though that seemed like a very non-thought out move. But I don't know. This MIBR team is always a team that's had a lot of potential. That's always a team that when they're on their game and they're on their high, like they can beat anybody. But they have times where I don't know, they get down and they can lose to the worst of them. So I don't know. This team needs to find, I think, an identity. I think this team needs to find a solid caller who can bring some stability and just stable results to the team. Because I know that when this team was formed, it was like the best players from like Bravos, I think, at the time, with like Turtle and
Yeah.
Joda and Wood, and then they combined it with like the best players from the other MIBR team at the time or something. But I mean, this was like the star team, and I just think that ever since they cut Wood, I mean, they definitely upgraded firepower, but they lost some identity, and I don't know if this Hen 1 move fixes anything, even if he has potential to be an amazing opper.
I mean, from when I played them, I thought they were like really hard to play against when they had Wood, and then I played them this past season in ECL on the with Stanislaw and them, and we almost beat them. So that just says it all. I mean, they kind of lost their touch. I don't know. I thought that move was kind of trash after we played them. Like, dude, they are. I want to say like they were playing different, but they didn't really have a direction they were going, honestly. And it was kind of like, wow, this team fell apart.
Do you guys think?
With adding Henny, they could be good, but they're still gonna have the same problems. He's not gonna hard carry the team.
Do you think that their opping was deficient with Burns and when you guys played them?
I mean, you definitely need a star oppers into the ACS. I just think they replace like one problem with another, if that makes sense. Like,
is he an opper?
Well, the thing
No,
I
no,
find,
no.
I think Brazen and Henny are both oppers.
Oh, okay.
Well, okay. So the thing,
No.
okay. So I can give some context on this.
Yeah.
So Burnson wasn't an opper originally, but he came into the roster to be an opper because Bit basically was like, I like him. He's from our academy program. He's young. He's young and elastic. I can just kind of do whatever I want with him. But if he's not necessarily, but he's obviously not going to be a star opper or a strong opper after only like what has it been like 3 months of being a main opper. So if you just want him to go back to his previous role of just being like an entry and just a general pack rifler, having Henny just be a direct upgrade to him in the opping front might be good. And MIBR kind of has to play with the pieces they're given. They're kind of like a team. They're losing Cello to Imperial. It's not that they chose to get rid of Cello. So from that perspective, I think that Henny's a good upgrade because it deals with one problem. But like you guys said, like losing Cello is a huge blow to the team. It solves the opping problem, but everyone else is going to really need to stick up in the rifling department.
And
I think you've already seen it. Joda has had a significant decrease in performance, so I don't know if he's somebody that needs like an IGL to be with him, or if I don't know. He was like their star player, and since they removed Wood, he has like fallen off a lot in form, and that is definitely a worrying sign for me.
And I mean, even Cello fragging himself, right? Like that is going to be sorely missed on this team. Like now you look to Henny and you're expecting him to kind of put up a performance, and then it also lies a lot on Brinson just to start fragging on the rifle again. Like so, it just this whole I think it all ties back to just dropping Woody and like whether or not that was the right decision, because him calling and opping, like it was like there was a lot on his shoulders, and now that you've gotten rid of him, it's like now what do you do? Like it's just such a difficult thing to fix, and I don't think Bit has figured out who he wants to pick to call on this team now, because that whole process is going to take ages to figure out what a good IGL is, because I don't think Cello cut it, frankly. When I watched MIBR play with the newer lineup, I thought Woody was serviceable, at least in that regard.
I got a source that told me, like a Brazilian player that told me Woody got cut because Bit wanted to implement his system from 9Z. So that's what happened.
Man, I guess I will say it did work, right? Like he did make an IGL out of a player that wasn't an IGL ever on 9Z. So it makes sense, but I guess these players weren't cut out for that system. At least
Yeah.
results speak for themselves, I think.
Well, speaking of Cello and Imperial, like him going to Imperial for FNX, as well as Peacemaker leaving Imperial, what are your thoughts on these moves?
Go ahead.
I mean, Cello's like obviously pretty good, so FNX was obviously obviously the issue. I mean, like, kind of fragging wise, but I mean, it should overall go fine. I feel like the move would be fine. I think Imperial will get better.
I think one thing Imperial was sorely lacking was a feasible map pool to actually compete against top level teams. Like
Yeah.
they had a really piss poor Vertigo, and the Ancient that they quote unquote try to throw a curveball in looked absolutely abysmal as well. And so you can tell that they're kind of still stuck in those like old habits of like old meta and stuff like that that can work in some situations like at the major where they had their deep run, but as soon as you kind of figure that out, their style runs really stale really fast. And I think bringing in Cello, who I'm sure has learned a lot from playing under Bit, can kind of guide Fallen in some of these situations where maybe they can have a deeper pool, because I think they have some good fundamentals. Like their Inferno looks pretty good, all things considered. And I think that if you have just a couple of maps that you can kind of evolve and develop into a more newer style, that there's still a lot to give from this team. Like Fur is still playing like he has been playing for quite some time. I think that this still has some legs to it.
Anyone else have any thoughts on Imperial?
I think they'll be fine, honestly, with the move. I think they'll get better. Like overall, they'll still stay in the same area.
All right. Moving forward from Imperial, let's talk about my boys at Davenport University, the first collegiate school to make it to ECL.
I need to be educated on this. Isn't this misleading? Wasn't
Make a wish.
wasn't
Yeah.
Koga's team or whatever the first one?
The Florida
in Premier?
team?
No. RMU?
You mean Spermy's team?
Well,
RMU,
that
yeah.
team had there's like a player or two that wasn't actually from RMU though.
Well, no, but they played relegation, but they didn't make it to MDL.
They did make MDL, I think.
No,
I
they did. They
could've
did.
sworn they were in MDL.
They were in MDL, but I'm not sure if it was with RMU exactly.
Oh,
I think they were named RMU in MDL.
Really?
I mean, I'll look right now.
No, they were
but-
named
Okay,
Rugrats.
okay.
They were named Rugrats.
Well,
Oh wait, no.
No,
Wait,
Rugrats
never
was like
mind.
Rico. It was like Rico's team.
Yeah,
Like
hold
those
on.
guys. Like, well, that was Xander's team. Yeah, they're not the same
Yeah.
team. I mean, I'll look right now. I don't
Okay,
think they
okay,
were
yeah, you can
though,
look.
because
but so how they got
I'm
this
not seeing
spot
it, guys. Yeah, I'm not
was
seeing it, guys.
Axolot broke up and formed with B&B. Is that how the slot opened up?
I believe so. And then
For the
you
most part, yeah.
had
Okay.
Kane, who got rid of their spot.
Yeah, RMU finished 6th place in season 29. That's kind of it. Like they came close, but not close
Okay.
enough.
So
I think
this is
two spots opened up, and
Okay.
maybe MIBR? I don't know. If I'm-
Basically, what happened was, so you look at it. Every season has a spot guaranteed for an EPL move down in case an EPL team who is not a franchise partner needs it. So that wasn't needed, so it opened up an extra spot. Then you have Godsend, who don't exist anymore, so they didn't hold their spot because the for whatever reason the 00 Nation org doesn't. I think their team's going to be in Europe all the time, so they don't really need to play in NAECL. And then for Axolotls, when you have they cut Germanji and Consti, or Germanji and Polo, and then Consti and Tender go to X Bad News Bears, so that kills that spot. And then Payne is looking unlikely to participate. Payne will not be playing this season, so.
So who all got move ups besides Davenport?
Unjustified, Northern Forces, Detonate.
Okay. Cool.
Pretty much every
I mean-
team in relegation, I think.
Yeah, no, legitimately every single team in relegation got moved up.
Dude, that's
I don't
awesome.
want to be that guy, but I mean, they'll probably be right back to advance. I mean, they might be able to.
Well, the
make
thing is that the
the
roster they have right now is not the
conference
roster they're using for ECL, most likely.
Oh, I mean, don't they have Sonic or whatever? Is that 100%?
No, that's not going through.
That fell through, I think.
Yeah, that fell
Well,
through.
They have the
yeah.
Stonian Swisher, and I know I mean he's a good friend, so I can't like
Uh-huh.
drop dime on it. But like he's always looking to improve the squad. So like it's one of those things where it's like they might play, they might be relegated. I don't think the goal for them. I mean, the only reason they're in ECL is because they got Make-A-Wished. So like it doesn't really matter to them to be in ECL. If they do good, like it's fine. But if they go back down to advance, doesn't really matter.
I mean, from like what I see from like their like, I've watched a couple of their comm videos. Like they have like a good like work ethic. I mean, they all work well together. But I mean, if they're making change, like I mean, the changes are gonna happen eventually. I mean, I don't see them beating a lot of these teams in ECL. I mean, they're a small sample group. There's they're from the university. I mean, there's just no chance they can compete against half of them. I mean, they might be able to make it close matches and stuff, but I mean, for the most part, it won't really do much.
They have very good comms. I'll give you that. Like I listened to them at I was standing behind them at Frag Chicago most of the event, and they have very clean comms for a relatively young team that's mostly inexperienced too.
Speaking of Davenport, I did see on their ESCA that Nart is on the roster. Could that be a coach move?
I'm just a glorified water boy.
Illusion.
Yeah.
It's called roster riding. Ever heard about it?
Nah, illusion. I provide all the tactics,
There we go.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. The other next topic is everyone's favorite is the ESICS coaching concessions.
I didn't even look at it, so
yeah. It's not that sexy.
Oh, Mims looks like he wants to talk about it. Go ahead, Mims.
Oh,
Eminem, sorry.
All right, so here's the thing. I mean, like, it's just like, do I even? Okay, fuck it. Like, it's whatever.
Man.
So they're like flawed and all that, right?
Yeah.
They got issues. Maybe they got issues. So many issues.
Mhm.
ESIC did everything right. Come on now.
Yeah, that's why all those matchmakers are still playing in Valorant. Wait, what?
I see no problem with that. New game.
Love you, bit.
Nah, bro, they're gonna be coming back. They're cutting the franchising
you.
spots.
Anyways, so I had a chance to talk to them in an email chain. I've had a chance to talk to like a lot of people. So this is sort of a continuation of that issue we have with Strife's former coach Toho.
Yeah.
Where ESIC bans them. Valve takes that information and comes to their own conclusion that doesn't factor in the additional sanctions that ESIC place on it. So, for example, like if you told them you're like, yeah, man, you got my ass, and they just take 20% of your ban away instead of them having to do the work, like Valve doesn't consider it a valid like criteria for decreasing your ban length, and that's so how you end up like, for example, with Jerry Guerry being banned for 5 majors when he was only banned for like a month and a half by ESIC. So ESIC changed their formula. They came back to Valve and said, all right, we changed our formula. This is what we think. Can you guys mirror this because you're just kind of taking our proprietary, ban data and just using it for your own devices? And Valve just said, nah. They just said,
that's crazy, man. Like Valve's like, nah, we're not gonna listen to your new
it's very strange because you can tell like ESIC and Valve have a very, very strained relationship, but the fact that they just kind of like ESIC is trying to actively make amends for their past mistakes, but Valve isn't really interested in it because Valve is just kind of like, we hate cheaters, we don't really give a shit. They see decreasing the bans as like I feel like almost as like a betrayal of like of like justice and how hard, because they like their justice harsh pretty much. It's like, he's back in Europe now, but the big thing with Toho was there's a good chance he wasn't going to be able to play, even though he was he was banned, but then he was acquitted by their reviews panel, but he still had those demerit points. So he was banned by Valve despite being not guilty of the crime, but ESIC had no way of convincing Valve that, hey, he didn't actually do anything wrong, because the independence review panel is independent of ESIC, so they can't zero out the points. It's all very like farcical and stupid, and this was like a 30 email chain between me and some of the ESIC guys, but like it's all a mess. Like ESIC is just at the point where even if they try to fix their issues, their past mistakes are so far entrenched in like the culture of the scene that it's like it's just a hot mess.
They're a laughing stock at this point.
Yeah,
I agree.
And we're speaking about coaches now. There was a Twitter post saying that there was like no coaching allowed at the major.
He just wants attention. I think he was just like, I'm gonna give myself some impressions, bro. Yeah. He's like, it's impression time, because this is the rule that's been in place since Stockholm, so nothing has changed. So he's like legitimately like I feel like every major until like the Heat of the universe, like some random tier 2, tier 3 like European coach would be like, did you guys know coaches are banned from the open qualifiers? And it's just like, yes, we all know. Like, that's basically it.
I mean, like, like with the open qualifiers though, like they're not even like looking at that though. It's like so like dumb, because I mean you can literally play with your coach, like you can have your coach in the qualifier like the whole time in the TS, and no one will ever know until you actually make it to the RMR. Like they don't like they don't
They
like
don't
ask-
regulate it. Then is what you're saying.
They don't regulate it. Yeah, they like you would never know. Someone can literally disk or screen share if they wanted to.
Allegedly, hypothetically, in a video game. Yeah.
Uh,
It's like terrible. I mean, I'm sure there's people that do it.
Yeah, pretty much. Also, speaking of probably like the longest like I think roster like organizational move ever with TImberman, with the rogue manager says TImberman signed for only 2 hours.
Hell yeah.
that is epic.
Longest reign ever, man.
I was saying they were trying to take away the record from 100 Thieves. They did a pretty good job.
I don't know. This is a sketchy subject, but I don't think anybody really wants to talk on this.
I don't think it's the shortest. I think we had something happen like 2 years ago that was like even shorter
Really?
than this. I was just really trying to think of the org and I can't.
What? Who was on it? Or...
I don't know. This is not the first time this has happened, and
Okay.
I know I know that for a fact. I just can't remember any of the like information.
I mean, I'm sure something similar has happened. Like NA orgs do this all the time, where like the social media managers like gets an email. It's like, hey, we'll be announcing like tomorrow at 6. He's like, today at 6. Like, great. Like,
Yeah,
I just thought it's a joke.
I mean, I
Uh,
think my
the whole
thoughts on
thing's
the
hell.
situation are pretty like well known. I think for me at this point, now that they've served their bans, now that they've been behaving mostly in ECL in advance, I don't know. Someone will eventually say something, but I think for me, the last thing these guys need to do is just like do a real twit longer or do a real video where you just apologize for being freaks, and then like it's like you guys can have an org now. Like it's fine. You guys are weirdos, but like it's okay.
I don't feel like I'm
eventually.
with you in that. I don't feel like they ever really formally apologized for what they did. I only feel like they promoted them doubling down on that.
Yep.
So they just served their ban, but didn't ever show remorse. So it's like there is no evidence to think that they've changed. Because my initial thought was, well, they served their ban. I don't think people should be held accountable for what they said years ago, but they never showed that they were sorry for it. And I think that's the issue. I think people would be willing to give them a chance, but it's just like we all look at them as those racist assholes because they never were like, oh, we're sorry.
I mean, have they like? I haven't heard anything about them misbehaving, but like, has it?
No, they've
have they
been
been
acting.
I don't-
We
Have
played
they
them
been
today, and
playing nice?
Snav was
Uh-huh.
not chat banned. All right.
Well, there you go.
So he was chat banned
Uh-huh.
like a month ago when we played relegation, but that is improvement. All
There you
right.
go.
Upward mobility, yeah.
He's
Well, it's
reformed.
sad that the most uplifting news that has come from them in the past couple of years is Shake just saying that right there. That's a problem.
I mean, I think they should have a chance eventually. Like maybe like not right now, but I mean, eventually they should get another chance.
Everybody should get second
Yeah.
chances, but you have to show remorse and you have to actually make use of it. And eventually you will run out of chances and good graces.
Because the thing is, like,
Like-
if they were just shit, I'd be like, whatever. But like, they're not awful players. Like, they're not. They're
Mhm.
pretty decent. Like, they were doing okay in MDL back before their original ban. So it's like, I mean, if they just like grow up and like literally just apologize and be like, yeah, saying the N-word was not cool. I'm sorry, guys. Like, and like, but not be facetious. Because I remember like one time they were banned, they all put out twit longers where it was like just word vomit, and it's like, like, and then they deleted them like a month later. So it's like, okay, you obviously didn't care then. There was no consequences for you, but now they've faced the consequences multiple times for being just weirdos. Like, just apologize and say like, yeah, we were dumb like internet kids, like, and then just move on.
Yeah.
The problem is that I think when you hang out with like in a group like that, it's usually like 1 or 2 people that promote it, and then the rest of the people just kind of go along. So I don't know if Kel is still around, but I'd be interested to see if he's like a lot better.
I mean, I think you're putting on a proper point of like, if you're in a group of people that all are just like, okay, well, I don't understand what's wrong with this. You're never going to understand what's truly wrong with it. So it's like they've got the whole outside scene coming at them, but then they've got their little inner group of people just saying, lol, why get offended?
I think everyone knows like it's wrong, but like you retreat back into the Discord, and then like someone's like, nah, they bitches ain't shit, and you're just like, yeah, you're right, like
Like what you say,
you're like,
and they know it's wrong, and I do believe that everyone deserves a second chance, but they have to show a little remorse, like what you said. Like if you don't learn from your past mistakes, you're still like you're gonna have to see my fan process. You gotta show some remorse. That's my take on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
And I'm gonna move on because I saw this on Reddit this morning. It was top on the global
Oh
offensive.
God.
Yeah, it's M&M's. You posted something on.
Oh, I hate. Why am I just making? It's
You-
just the M&M's variety hour. Like,
No, this, I saw it. I'm like, oh, we have it. I'm on. We're gonna let it talk about. Explain it a little.
oh,
Can you
Jesus.
explain it from the beginning? Because I have no clue what this is even
Yeah.
about.
Okay, so 1xBet is one. Everyone knows what 1xBet is. Like, just one of the larger sportsbook in the world. So they're like a billion dollar company. They sponsor a lot. In traditional sports, they sponsor a lot of like big football clubs, and they sponsor a lot of like smaller. It's like they sponsor Barcelona. I think they sponsor like Manchester. Maybe like Arsenal, a couple of those clubs back in the day. They sponsor a bunch of like African football clubs. But the thing is, the way they operate their business is very sketchy. Like, the owners of 1xBet are wanted by the Russian government for fraud. And so they apparently, like, allegedly, like, everything is allegedly because this article posted by Steve Menery says, like, they went to their corporate headquarters or, like, their payment processing headquarters in Cyprus, and it was just, like, an empty house or, like, an empty apartment. So they're very sketchy in like traditional sports, and they do a lot of things that aren't like that aren't above board. They don't really pay taxes. Their licensing is very sketch. So the way it works for them is they register their license usually in like tax havens like Bahamas or like the Netherlands Antilles and stuff like that, where there's like no regulation. So they've been increasingly getting involved in esports. They sponsor ESL, they sponsor OG, Merit, MIBR, Spirit. They offer bets on HLTV. You'll see them like at tons of events, tons of betting sponsors for everything. But this is going back to June. They got sued in December. They got sued for defrauding some people in Israel who would place like a bunch of bets on the company, or place a bunch of bets on like some football fixture. But then when XBet said, "Oh yeah, you actually aren't allowed to place those bets," and they just like took their money away. Like they said, like there was they detected like fraud. So they filed a class action lawsuit against 1xBet. They lost the class action lawsuit. They appealed. They lost the appeal.
Who lost it? Who lost
The 1xBet lost the appeal. And so they're I always say this island's name wrong. Curacao, Curacao, yeah. They lost they're in the process of losing their license in Curacao, but like the article says, it doesn't necessarily really matter because a company like this doesn't actually have a physical headquarters. It can continue running without a license, and they can just they can just get a new license from like Nigeria or like Malaysia or the Philippines or Chad or something. So it ultimately doesn't really matter for them. But the main point I want to point out is just like the increasing prevalence of sketchy money and sketchy sponsors in esports.
Yeah, the only thing you can really do is provide awareness about it. If there's just legal loopholes to go through, the only thing you can do is like show the whole community, hey, these guys are dog shit, and then just like everybody drops them.
And also like these big orgs like ESO, OG, MIBR, and Spirit, they gotta do their follow through and actually check on if these guys are legit.
I don't think they really care. Like I
exactly
legitimately don't think esports. I don't think esports organizations really care about the moral implications of these betting sponsors because they just have the convenient cover of being, well, we just offer odds, and sometimes things are a little bit weird, but it's okay. Like GGBet, 1xBet, Vulcan Bet, all these sponsors operate very similar. They operate very legally dubiously. Like 1xBet, offers cockfighting, and they offer like all these things that are definitely like not acceptable to like a Western audience. But it doesn't matter if you have the layer of abstraction. Like we're just sponsored by 1xBet for like their esports program. Like the cockfighting and the lawsuits and all this stuff doesn't matter. It doesn't tie into the relationship when it obviously does. Like the whole it's just sports. It's just sports watching. It's just another way to entrench their their criminal empire. So it's all like.
That's why I wanted to bring it up because I want to like hear in depth because just reading it on the Twitter and reading it on Reddit, like I wanted you to explain it. That's why, and it was actually pretty interesting. That's why.
The article is definitely worth a read. If anyone, everyone should go read it. Like,
yeah,
I never read the Steve Mearney guy before, but it was definitely a very good. It was a very good read, and there's an article in there that is like a follow up that covers like other betting companies, and you all see like there's definitely good betting companies that operate in the ecosystem. But the overwhelming majority of them, are very loosely loosely connected to reality and connected to like what's acceptable like in business practices. It's all under regulated. It's all digital. when they went bankrupt in June, they like appointed like a bankruptcy trustee to go like close the company and do all the things you would do when a company becomes bankrupt. So he went to go like look at their bank account. It had like $0 in it. He went to like the licensing office, and the licensing office said, yeah, that'd be kind of bad for 1xBet, so we're just not gonna we're not gonna we're not gonna like get rid of their license. Even though he's like, I'm legally in charge of the company as the bankruptcy trustee, and they're like, yeah, that's great, but we're just not gonna do that. And like, and he even said, like, even though I have the ability to make this company not exist, they'll just reform as like 1xBet 123 instead of 1xBet like 1234, in somewhere else. And I think they even just re-registered like the same company in the same country under like a different name. So there's nothing you can really do about it other than shame them
bring awareness
and shame the sponsors of them.
Yeah.
I want to like also just touch on that. WePlay was sponsored for a period. I don't know how much I'm allowed to say. There's not much I know, obviously, but WePlay was sponsored by 1xBet for a period, and we did this. I imagine you guys probably didn't hear about it because it's fighting games, but we did a tournament series called WePlay Ultimate Fighting League, and we got canceled so hard by the fighting games community. And that was a long time before anyone big in Counterstrike started partnering up with them, right? Before OG, before ESL. None of that happened in Counterstrike. And I don't know. I feel like it's kind of telling about the CS community, and that like a lot of the time people just don't care. And maybe that's why orgs also don't care, because they know they're not going to get, canceled for stuff like this. But I don't know. I find it frustrating personally.
The fighting game community is also like really niche, and at all times everybody's worried about everything. So they're all they're super tight knit, and they're sketchy about like everything.
There's also in the CSGO space, there's like there's a very powerful vested, money machine that doesn't want there to be, negative reporting on this, and they don't really want there to be like a cancel culture effect where, the Twitter sphere gets all angry and shuts this down. Because I mean, ESL is the biggest CSGO tournament provider in the world. They know that they just like they'll never give up 1xBet community pressure, because the benefits, the money machine is worth more than any community outrage. And where CSGO fans also go, they don't go anywhere. Like there's nowhere else for them to go. So I think fighting game has the advantage, like you said, of it being niche enough where a fighting game TO can be ruined if the fans stop, signing up for the event, stop visiting it, all that. But ESL, it doesn't really matter. ESL is unsanctionable because of their size.
I thank you, M&M's, for bringing it up, because I wanted to hear the clarification of what the article and everything on stream since we had you today.
Mm-hmm.
Before we like joke around a little, I just want to bring it up. Like, was there any other roster moves, like anything really big you guys want to bring up, or nah?
I think we
Nothing
covered
really-
all the big ones.
Yeah, the big ones.
Yeah.
I guess the
Now-
only one is maybe the new Copenhagen Flames, but that's obviously not been announced yet.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Let's do have a little fun right now and do a little fucking around. Who would you say is like the biggest winners of the player break transfer window?
Sprout.
Yeah, no, Sprout gets a huge win here. I'll go with complexity here as well. I think Hauser for juniors is a good move.
I
We
think-
didn't touch on it, but I think Liquid might be if they bring in Yakindar.
Oh
yeah,
my
it's
God.
it's not
Please,
That,
Mr.
that
confirmed.
still
Biden.
hasn't been finalized, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it,
it's not
I don't know what's going on, but if Liquid brings it, I think that is
the big one. Yeah.
a huge move, and Liquid will be a title contender
I
again.
think Liquid too. I
100%.
think my big thing is that nothing happens on accidents in the esports scene. Like no one just says no player at the tier 1 level just goes and says like dumb shit and like stuff out of pocket that like doesn't have any like meaning to it. So when you have all the Liquid players and Yakinder and the coach being like, gosh, I would just love to make, I would love to find a way to play on Liquid. I think it's, I would really stay with these guys, but only if I had a chance. Like players don't like get the fans like mind turning like that for no reason, and they don't constantly go into interviews and say like how great it is to play with Yakinder and how great it is for Yakinder to play with Liquid if they aren't gonna figure it out. Like
Let's bring Twist back to NA.
As we saw-
Twist back to NA.
I'll throw Navi as a winner as well.
I'm gonna be a
Really?
little different and say Vitality. I think
For
bringing in
winners?
Spinks.
Ooh, fuck.
Yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
Because
Yeah,
we didn't
fuck,
really touch on it.
Yeah,
Yeah, we didn't touch on it earlier, but
Let's not
I
confirm.
think Spinks brought into Vitality. It's not going to work immediately. I don't think this necessarily solves their issues, but like as a firepower legacy player to build alongside Zywoo, I think Spinks is like.
But
bang
has
for your buck right
anything
there.
been really working with giving them time?
Eh,
We've given all
mean-
of them a lot of time.
Yeah, I guess it has to do with like the whole like culture shock between like this Danish and French system trying to find the middle ground. I'll
And
be
I got a
honest, I
third
wouldn't
one?
be yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if post this major cycle, Apex is out of the team. Magist calls because they invested way too much into the Danes, and I just
Mhm.
don't think they stick with Apex in the long run if it's not working.
Mine
The
would
thing
be
I'm
not.
thinking about with that is like, where does Ziwu fit into that then? Because he doesn't
Yeah.
really speak amazing English either, and then he's gonna be the only French player on the team. So like,
Yeah, I think it's good, and he's their. I mean, I just don't see them ever parting
They
ways.
just
with Zyphon
re-signed him
unless-
too, right, with a long
Yeah,
contract.
I think so.
exactly.
Yeah.
They're not gonna let him go for
Yeah.
cheap. Like,
No.
I don't think he's
Alright.
going anywhere.
Well, I wouldn't say they would cut him, but I'm saying like, if he just gets so uncomfortable and so
Yeah.
unhappy that he's like, I fuck this, I'm just not playing.
Right,
I'm
right,
not
yeah,
playing
yeah.
anymore.
He
Like,
I think if they had to choose between the
Yeah.
Danes and Zywu, it's going to be Zywu every time.
Yeah, he definitely has like that LeBron James like GM type, where he can.
But
he
he
has a
doesn't
lot
have
of.
the personality, right? He has the skill like LeBron.
Yeah, yeah,
like,
but I would
have,
say
like-
he has a factor, right? You guys think? And
Right, definitely, yeah,
the
for sure.
roster moves. But we don't have anybody listed as losers.
I
Fnatic.
got the end.
Oh, you
Fnatic.
Fnatic?
Yes, a Fnatic. I have.
Did you say MIBR?
No,
Yeah, honestly,
I
I
don't
don't
know
know.
that might
like
be
that
on.
might be our move.
Yeah.
I kind of
I
like
mean, they
it
have
too.
to make some move, but I mean, it's like
That,
their
and I
team
feel like
already
Henning
has-
is
Well,
nuclear. I think
Cloud9.
most of the players on that roster.
Movistar, you have to include in there.
Yeah.
I think Movie Star's a big one.
Do you think Cloud9 should have made a move?
No.
No way.
A
No
A
way.
team that I hates me to do this, but I'm gonna say Furia
As
for
losers? You
not
think?
making a move.
I
not.
like that. That's
I
good.
think that Furia should have made a move, and that I don't know if it was burnout at the end of the season. I love like everybody on that team, but I mean they were a team that was looking to take titles this last
Mhm.
season, and
Yeah,
they
well,
didn't.
were. Yeah.
The interesting
And
thing,
I
yeah,
think they might want to
Alan,
make a move.
Alan, what do you think? What moves do you think they should make?
Big use error for drop.
Ooh, that's
yeah,
a good
I like
one. That's a good one. Yeah, I think they've gotten to a point where they've kind of just stagnated as like an identity of like their team. They've always been that team that everybody's like, oh, they should be winning titles, they should be contending, they should be making playoffs, and every single time they've had some like weird just like fuck up, and it's so out of character from the players that are on that team. They should be succeeding on paper like 100 times out of 10, but it just
Has
doesn't work.
Payne
Yeah.
has Payne announced their new roster yet?
it's
No,
supposed to be
rumored.
Skulls and Zevi. Like that's what's being reported by the Brazilian scene. So
What do you guys think about their move from
pretty nice.
yeah?
Yeah.
Zevi's
Where
really
we,
good.
Where do we have G2 and EG?
I don't think I could put G2
Mid.
on a winners or losers because
Yeah,
it's
maybe.
undecided. It
Mid-tier.
could go either direction.
I think it's a winner. I think
You
it's a
could
winner.
put Ence in the
Dude.
losers maybe too.
I was gonna say, yeah, I think
Definitely
you can
answer
also put them in
losers.
losers.
I think the loser could be EG depending on how it goes. I mean, it's all 50-50 honestly.
I don't think
Either gonna
I don't think
it's
it's, a
either gonna
winning
real-
move. Like
it's either gonna go really
It's a
good
move.
or
it's one of the moves of
it's
the
gonna be a
offseason,
scrap.
yeah.
It's either gonna be a whole new roster by September when the contract's done, or it's gonna go really well off the beginning. But it has to start at Blast. It has to start at Blast.
What
Wait.
constitutes as good though?
Like
Like
I mean,
not
if they're
falling
able-
out of groups,
not getting completely destroyed every fucking map, maybe.
yeah, yeah. That's
If they get more than if they
Getting
get
more
10
than 10
rounds,
rounds.
10 rounds against FaZe, there's a chance.
Yeah.
I think you gotta add another category to the sheet, man. I think
Imperial.
you gotta add a big question
mid-
mark to like one of them.
Like freaking the mid category that's like legit like G2.
Hey,
When
I'm
we
just
add a
saying,
mid?
A mid, I'll add a mid.
And
for
mid is like
G2.
G2,
Yeah.
EG.
Heat's also a W.
He is a W.
Yeah, I
It-
suppose.
Small W.
Falcons or whatever.
Falcons
I think
feels
Falcons is
mid.
mid.
I feel
Mid?
because like one makes a lot of sense, the other one's kind of like eh.
Like you got an upgrade, but you also got a big downgrade if you're the Falcons.
Yeah, yeah.
like what do you guys about Navi?
I think
Winner.
Navi is also
I
mid.
think Navi's mid, yeah.
Mid.
Yeah.
All right. Who's challenging Navi and FaZe, who are like way above everybody?
No one.
Nobody.
I don't think anybody.
Nobody
Yeah.
made a big enough move to really
Potential? I think G2.
Or if you had to pick somebody,
Yeah, I'd say G2 would probably be the
G2?
safe.
That's
I think
safe,
G2 and Liquid are the two I'd go with.
I'm
My-
hoping. My guy is hoping.
That's what I'm
No,
doing.
no,
If,
I
if
think
Liquid
I
get
think
you
they're super.
Kendar, I think they have. I don't think Liquid will be better than FaZe, but I think Liquid could beat Navi.
All right, know this. I think Astralis.
Nah,
Damn.
that's Cope.
Cope.
That's Cope.
Yeah.
That's
Do you, guys, do, you
that's
guys, do
Cope.
you guys smell that? I smell a lot of cap in the room right
I think
now. I'm gonna
Cloud
be honest.
Cloud9, since
Yeah,
they
it could
they
be
showed
Cloud9.
that they could beat
That's not a bad
FaZe.
one either. Yeah.
So
Mine is
think-
like G2 and Vitality. If they can, that's mine. Like they could, but I don't think no one.
I don't think Vitality yet. I think Vitality's
like
gonna take some time.
What do you guys? Okay, I know it's been a while, but what do you guys think about Heroic with the whole refresh change? Like, do you think they'll be like after they have some more time to with the new fifth
Heavy?
that they'll?
Yeah.
Do you think they'll be like? Yeah.
I think
they-
they've got plenty of
I
time.
think
right?
after the player break. I mean, if they, I don't know if they practiced during it. I'm sure they probably didn't. But like, if they come
They
back
did.
strong, I mean, they could be a contender. Because I mean, honestly, I always liked Heroic, and I think like
Yeah.
they've always been like a top 10 team for sure. I mean, HLTV has them like a little bit lower, but I mean, like every time they play like Navi or like any top 5 team, it's always close. Like always close. I honestly thought that they were gonna be Navi in the major, and they had the chance to 100%. They had the chance to fucking 2-0 them. I mean, that's
yeah,
solid.
it's always been like those like big pressure games that they kind of just fall apart, right? And I think
It's
they've had enough experience at this point that you should say that I think they could be a contender. I think the only issue now is making sure that Yabi fits in and fits in with these kind of personalities and
And
kind of
they're
has this like big step into the spot.
I think they'll be
it's more
top. I think they'll be top 5 this year.
Yeah,
honestly.
I go
not
with
a bad
that.
take.
Perfect. Yeah, that's a good take.
Is Virtus Pro allowed to be a loser? Like, do they even exist anymore?
I think you can just put
Technically,
Rocket
yeah,
in the
but
loser
they're
category.
like with their new lineup, you don't like
I don't think it's very good.
Maybe Russian players.
Is Device? Does that mean Device is also a loser of the shuffle?
Dude, who knows?
I mean,
I have no clue what Device is
NIP
up
are
to.
losers because they have not
NIP
done
and
anything.
Astralis, yeah, both kind of just like missed out. I feel here.
What do you guys have OG on your thing on your top
Oh,
icon
shit.
list?
Mid. I
Mid.
think it's
Mid?
mid.
100%
Do you think?
Honestly-
Do you think they'll make it top 15 or top 10?
I think
this
they
year?
could.
I think they peak at top
Already
15.
16, so sources would say that it's probably more likely than unlikely. But
Yeah,
I mean,
I feel
I
like they're
think
going to be
OG
a
is
top
getting to
10,
that
top
point.
15.
They're probably to that point where it's like this either works or we just scrap the fuck out of everything because
Oh,
they have
wait.
been
Yeah.
in I feel like purgatory for so long now where they like they've got the money to make an event winning roster but they don't have it, and they've always made these rosters that are just like, oh well, with time they'll improve, which is what they did again, but if they don't improve then I feel like it just all goes to the scrapping table.
I mean, OG's last official was the 26th of June. I mean, they've looked pretty. I mean, from how short of a time they played, I mean, they took a map off. They won a series of Navi. They almost beat Navi in the semis. Like, I mean, granted it was a while ago, but still,
They have
they
Dexter now, so
they could be. Yeah, I
Are
mean,
you
they
talking
could still
about
be.
Blast?
Yeah, when they played Blast and stuff, I went with their like new roster, like the last roster. I don't know if there's a new
that was
one.
with
but-
Montu.
No,
right?
no, that
No,
was
that
with-
was
that
Dexter.
with
That was Dex.
Dexter.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
that was with
when he was
Dexter?
standing in,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then they had their
Now they
old
have him for
roster
sure.
again, and now they have signed him officially.
Which was kind of funny. We talked about that, how it's just
Yeah, we
like
did.
Mantu just kind of got thrown out and said, oh well.
It was like poor old Hades.
That
I mean,
was
I think OG could
that
be
was
another
the
top
Vice and Nox situation, right?
pretty
Yeah.
much, yeah.
Pretty much.
I think like for me as someone who has been following a lot of like tier 2 tier 3 for years now, and that's kind of like my thing, Neofrag and Fiku, fantastic pickups in terms of like if
Mhm.
this is really the direction they're committing to, like talent development and stuff like that. They have a fucking amazing talent, like amazing lineup, but
They
it
do.
is it going to
Deliver.
give them results immediately? And no, probably not. So it's just kind of like how long are they willing to wait it out, considering like
that's a good move,
They've-
Danny. Smart man.
Wait, what?
What
Oh,
happened?
I'm looking at the old Twitch chat, and sources say that Danny over here is trying to get that FPL trying to get an FPL match running while on the show. I
No,
respect
no.
that.
I just queued up. That's all. I'm just waiting for the queue to pop
Ah,
eventually.
mad respect, man. Mad respect.
Your
I won't-
punishment will be to play with Jam, unfortunately. So
I know. I don't know why he's in the hub.
oh,
I'm kidding.
Damn.
I'm kidding.
Throwing
And then,
shade.
Jam,
I'm
lastly,
kidding. I'm kidding.
Lastly, we're gonna
it's
joke.
good.
We're gonna joke it off a little. You know the update that happened this week of the update. And it was it's a clusterfuck. I'll give it that. Did you
I
guys
didn't
have
play
MM at
MM.
all? You didn't play
Nope.
MM?
I never play MM.
All
Played
I
a
know
little
is
bit of-
Brian
played a
has
little bit of
still
him.
got a dog ass rank. Let's
Really?
go.
What is it?
I believe he's still in silver.
What?
Brian CS? No shot.
Brian? I swear to God, he still had a dog
I
ass
think that
rank.
was a meme. I'm pretty sure he's like LEM or SMFC.
If he is SMFC, bro, then this update is dog shit.
I think I think my highest rank in matchmaking was LEM. That's the
Yeah,
highest I've ever gotten.
If you
God,
win,
listen, all I'm saying is God is good, and I got that Supreme.
I don't know. I just didn't really care
Yeah,
about matchmaking.
nah, it was
Same.
just hilarious watching the Twitter feeds and people just
I
like.
got Supreme in my first game. I had a cheater in it, so it feels good.
Oh yeah.
It dropped like 50, had like 80% headshot. I was like, this is a lot of fun.
Are you sure
Alright.
you're just not playing with Breeze?
Oh god. I mean, everybody in EU's ranks dropped, and everybody's in NA's basically went
Rose.
up. And
Hey,
Yeah.
we're winning in something, right?
Don't worry,
Yeah,
Brian.
exactly.
I'll
A
cut
win's
you,
a
homie.
win.
I won't let Andren talk about just say shit out of pocket about you. All right, like
What do you mean? Brian's fun.
All right. Before we close it off, I'm gonna give it to Anthony because he wanted to say something. Go ahead.
Okay, so I kind of ran this through M&M's. We said I'm beating the dead horse here, but after spending most of my player break trying to ingrain myself into the Smash scene, I have realized there is a big fucking problem, and I say with NA in particular because I don't have as much like understanding of it over in EU, but there is no content being made for North America right now other than like informational content, which you got from Nart and a couple of others, then just all the basic stuff reshelled and reviewed. Whereas in the olden days, when NA was looking good, you had all these big content creators, you had all these top streamers, and we don't have that anymore. I think there are so many up-and-coming talents who put all of their effort into, I mean, and all, it's not something you can really diss, but they put all of their effort into trying to improve in the game, where I already think NA has probably got some of the best mechanics in the world. I mean, that could be a hot take if you want it to be, but I think they're not necessarily putting all of their emphasis on the right spots. I think at NA right now, we are lacking a massive amount of personality. The problem is, when I look at Tier 2, Tier 3 NACS in comparison to EU, sure, the skill level is a bit different, but most of the time I watch those games, it just kind of feels like it's the team's friends watching. It's just like, oh yeah, I know this guy, let's go. Hey, you know, I know him on a first name basis or whatever. Instead of people actually being fans. I don't think you have enough people trying to stream themselves, build up a fan base for themselves. I don't think you have orgs promoting their players properly. I don't think we have enough Twitch streams running. I don't think we have enough of anything going on in NA. And I think it's all being focused, like, I think a big drought in NA right now is being focused on the fact that we're not contending on the world level, when in another aspect, I think we need to have more content creation in NA. We need to have more personalities that's not just, I'm another shit poster in FPL.
you know, some people would say some NA CSGO players have too much personality, but that's a different
Okay,
discussion.
okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I should specify.
Leave me alone.
But I realize this because there's a lot of times in Smash where a lot of people make their livings from their Twitch streams and from doing things externally from actually just playing the game in tournaments and just buckling down and grinding and showing off what they've got and using that as a tool rather than as a crutch. Whereas in a couple of Smash events, somebody who you've never heard of does good, and all of a sudden they're averaging 200-300 viewers on Twitch and they're making enough money off of subscriptions to live easily. So I think in almost every other game, there is way more content creation and way more people having a personality for themselves and building up fan bases for them and their teams and giving more of a reason to watch the scene.
I mean, I completely agree with you. I think it's kind of telling that somebody like Stewie, who's performing the way he was, and clearly, you know, having issues within the system, was given so many chances just because, well, he's a big name, you know. Who else is there in NA that's a big name right now? All the old guard, Shroud, and Nothing, and all that are all gone now. So
I think the golden age of CS:GO like content for NA is kind of over. It was a very like you can't really compare then to now. Like that was a super unique time in NA CS:GO where you had like so many notable teams and there's just animals in rank S. So like there's infinite amounts of content of people just screaming at each other. But I don't know now. I think like making good CS:GO content is very hard for a player unless you're going down like the analytical route. Like it's something you can't really. I don't necessarily know like what a player can really do to diversify themselves by just streaming FPL, because if you kind of like you need to try an FPL, whereas in rank S you could just be funny, silly, screamo man like Mo, and then you'd be kind of fine. But like
Dude,
players
have you
kind
not
of
watched any FPL stream?
I was gonna say, I mean, you're talking about people screaming at each other and that
I
being
don't-
more content
I don't-
idea, but I don't know if that's.
We should get Shake
I
and
think-
Danny's input on content creation.
I mean,
Cooper
Shake's
steals
been
all the
doing it. That's why it
viewers.
came to mind.
too. Yeah.
Cooper needs to go move to EU so that they watch us play FPL.
I mean, Cooper
We need to
grinded for a while,
deport
so
Cooper.
Cooper grinded for a while, so he deserves deserves it all. But honestly, FPL is just like I would stream it more. Like I did stream it a long time ago. But like, dude, if I streamed it, I don't know, man. I'd probably be hairless, honestly. Like, it's just terrible. I don't enjoy it a lot of the time. Like I can't sit there and stream because I'll just get upset and want to bitch and complain. But I know I can't do it on stream.
I think the golden age is gone, like how Eminem's talked about. Like I don't think you're gonna have any Tarex, any Stewies that come around anymore. But I think that still is a foundation, and there still is people that watch. Like Freak is kind of an old guard, but Cooper definitely built up his stream. He's definitely done the best, I'd say, in terms of it. And then like Ponalone and Swisher both have a pretty good following and a pretty good community, and they stream consistently. So I think the biggest thing is that you just have to be consistent. You have to stream FPL a lot, and I think Swisher and Cooper and Ponalone have done that the most over the past like 2 years, and they've definitely benefited from it. But they're not going to hit Tarek. They're not going to hit Stewie numbers. I mean, those guys' brands are just through the roof. I mean,
Also they were like top.
They
I mean, they were also major winners. I mean,
yeah,
I
they have,
agree
like,
with that, but
further
like
comes
they're
with it. But yeah,
with that in mind, like they're still. I don't think it's about being the next Tarek. Number one, I think right now there's a lot of people talking about how in North America there's a big lack of funding when there is no like back net. That's why I brought up the Smash scene, because there isn't really a back net for Smash scene. Like you don't play in tournaments for the money. You play in it because you enjoy it. You play in it for the pride. You play in it for the fame. The real money comes in external ways of streaming, of coaching, of doing all this other thing.
But the thing is, like, Alan could walk up to Smash Weekly and like slap the shit out of them with like a wad of $100 bills. So like, comparing the scale of that scene to like our scene is like so analogous. Like they win like their equivalent of a cash cup, and they're like, I got $16.
I'm
Let's
not
go.
talking
Like,
about the money of that. I'm saying like there still isn't a backlog. Like there could easily be a backlog in North American Counterstrike. Like there is definitely something to be built of an actual community between streams. If somebody who doesn't just watch Cooper and watch Cooper's games, but instead watches the whole scene, because he then becomes ingrained into all of the storylines.
let's see what happens with the PA at the what's it called next line that they play at. If they win it or they play really well, I mean, those players are gonna get a bigger following. Like people are not gonna watch them. Like all these like tier 2 teams have not, like, no one's won anything. Like I mean, you have like what ECL or whatever, but like that's really it. Like I mean, it's like you got your team out there, because then people are gonna be like, oh, I know this guy, he won this event, and they're gonna click on your stream if they see it. That's like how I kind of think about it.
that's a valid point.
You've been doing it recently, right? Like you've been streaming a lot more. I swear to God, I see your clips on Twitter all the time now.
I've just been streaming the cash cups, but like once player break ends, like I don't know if I'm gonna be able to be playing cash cups with all these guys again. Like maybe Malvs and Junior still, because they're on the bench, but who knows? Like I'm definitely gonna stream cash cups. I think that's like the best content you can do. But outside of that, FPL is probably the best content you can make in terms of like playing, because nobody really want to watch his pugs. And so I don't know. Like I maybe could play FPL, but it's definitely mentally challenging to do that, I'd say.
All right, I think we're gonna end the show here. I appreciate all the guests for coming out, and I want to thank Saga for putting the show together. So that's gonna end episode 10 of CS Out Here, and I want to say thank you, Refrag, for the sponsor. Till next time, peace out.